Welcome everybody to our field hearing for our Mankato area residents, and this is the official meeting of the Transportation Finance and Policy Division of the Minnesota House of Representatives. I'd like to welcome you. My name is Frank Hornstein. I'm the chair of the committee, and this is the 5th out of 5 field hearings that our committee has participated in. We've been to St. Cloud, the North Metro, the South Metro, the City of Minneapolis, and then we're ending our tour here in Mankato, and very pleased to see such a big turnout. This has always been a very, very active area in terms of a variety of transportation issues, and so we're really looking forward to your testimony today. Our agenda is as follows. We will do as we've customarily done in all of our field hearings. We'll have members of our committee introduce themselves, as well as our incredible staff. Mr. Howe has been stellar in terms of taking care of all the logistics for these various meetings all over the state. Let's give him a round of applause. And Ms. Stephen, our committee legislative assistant, has also put in many, many extra hours to make sure these meetings have happened, and they've been great so far, and we look forward to a good day here. Following that, we will have a couple of bills. We're actually going to hear some bills today on an informational basis only. We won't take action on the bills, but your hometown member, Representative Brand, has a couple of bills, one related to Highway 14 and one related to local roads, and we'll hear those bills. We'll have testimony on those bills and question and answer of the author and testifiers as we normally would do at the Capitol. And then we're going to hear from all of you. And we have a list of names of people who've called in advance, and several have indicated today that they're interested in testifying. And so if you'd like to testify and you haven't let us know, you can talk to Mr. Howe, and we'll get you on the list. We will try to conclude as close to 3 o'clock as possible, and therefore we ask members of the public to limit your testimony to 2.5 minutes, and Mr. Howe will indicate when you just have a few seconds left so you can wrap up. So with that, I'd like to start with our introductions, and let's start from our left and then move around, and following that we'll have some words of welcome from Representative Torkelson, who's been an incredible representative for this part of the state, and our former colleague Ruth Johnson will also welcome you, and then we will proceed with our hearing. So.
My name is Carly Martin. I am the legislative assistant for your local representative, Jeff Brand.
My name is Jennifer Nelson. I'm the DFL researcher with the Transportation Committee.
And I'm Linda Runbeck, state representative from the northern suburbs. Decided to come and tour Mankato today, and have sat on the Transportation Committee for 6 years.
My name is Ruth Richardson, and I represent District 52B, which includes Mendota Heights and River Grove Heights, Sunfish Lake, and a little bit of Egan.
Claire Stephen, Representative Hornstein's legislative assistant, and the committee LA as well.
And again, Frank Hornstein, the area I represent is parts of downtown and southwest Minneapolis.
Hello everyone, my name is John Howe. I'm the committee administrator, and I'll be doing my best to help coordinate testimony today. So if you think you'd like to say something, please give me a wave and I'll try to help you out. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Paul Torkelson, representing District 16B, all of Brown County, most of Redwood County, and a couple of townships in Renville County, and Republican lead on the committee.
John Petersburg, I represent 24A, which is Owatonna-Waseca, east of here.
Representative John Heinrich, representing the cities of Anoka and Ramsey, District 35A. Glad to be here with you all today.
Chelsea Access, and I'm GOP staff.
Fantastic. So I'd like to now call on our former colleague, and I had the pleasure of serving with her for a few years from this area, and I think she'll welcome you on behalf of our number of former legislators that are with us. And I see Clark Johnson, and I don't know if former Representative Morrow is here, but we have many transportation champions that have served in this region over the years. And so I'd like to call on Representative Johnson to say a few words of welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair Hornstein. Welcome to the distinguished members of this committee and distinguished staff who I happen to be able to do all the work. Thank you for being here with us today, and welcome to all of you who are representatives of local units of government, people who work with organizations that help support good transportation here in Minnesota, safety departments, I see are represented as well. Welcome to do the people's business today. We have so many important things to work on. Clark, I hope we can hear from you, and even Terry Morrow. This is how we do democracy. Thank you all for coming today, so let's get to work.
Thank you. And I'd also, we'll have Representative Torkelson say some words as well, but I wanted to see if Mayor Massad is here. Know that she was potentially going to be here. We'll hopefully see her later. And then I also wanted to have Commissioner Vance Sturenberg welcome us as well. He has been an incredible champion of transportation. He's not only the vice chair of the county board, but he's also the chair of the Minnesota Association of Counties Transportation Committee. So a very distinguished leader on this issue, and we'll have you also, as a local elected official, have a few words here with us.
Where would you like me?
Well, I think you're going to testify perhaps later, but at this point, just if you feel like you want to, kind of like Representative Johnson, former Representative Johnson, if you want to stand,
Sure.
address us and the crowd, that would be great.
Well, welcome to the greater Mankato area. We have a beautiful area. We are actually the heart of the state of Minnesota. People come here from all over. We're blessed to have this area. Blue Earth County is a gorgeous county. We actually have 15 different parks across Blue Earth County, which are actually diamonds. People across the state don't have that many parks, and we really consider our parks an amazing attribute to our county. This, of course, I'm going to be, other people around the area here are going to be welcoming you and telling you more about the city of Mankato and the greater Mankato area. I don't have their background, and but I'm just blessed to be able to be here as a county commissioner, and I'm blessed to have you folks here coming to the city of Mankato and to Blue Earth County. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I would like to now hand it over for some additional words of welcome from my colleague and a great advocate of transportation for this region and the state, Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, thank you, Chair Hornstein, for that kind introduction. Frank and I have reversed roles, actually, this year. Last year, I was the chair of this committee, and Frank was the lead. We've kind of traded seats, but we do have, I believe, a good working relationship, and I look forward to continuing that. We don't agree on everything, but we do manage to talk about it, and that's important. Lately, in my life in transportation, it's been all MNLARs all the time. If you're familiar with MNLARs, you kind of know how difficult that issue has been. But compared to Highway 14, MNLARs is just a blip in the screen. I can remember when I first started running for office that there were a lot of folks from my district that were talking about Highway 14 long before I even got endorsed. As soon as my name surfaced as a potential candidate, the advocates of 14 were talking about the very important work that needed to be done on Highway 14. We've accomplished some of that in the last 10 years, but of course there's more to be done. And I'm really happy, Frank, that you saved the best for last. We've been around the state and done a number of hearings, and there are, of course, important road projects all over the state of Minnesota, and the folks in each area are very passionate about theirs, but I believe that Highway 14 people are just a little more passionate, and I'm very, again, once again, I'd like to say how happy I am that you did save the best for last, Frank.
Thank you, sure. So one last thing before we start our hearing, a special word of thanks to Pat Henches, the city manager here, and his staff. They have welcomed us, and this is a beautiful space, and really embraced the idea of the committee coming down here as soon as we started circulating this idea. So to this whole city staff and the city of Mankato, thank you. So we have two bills that we're going to have a hearing, that we're going to have a formal hearing on. Again, we're not taking action on these We're, as we say, we don't even have unfortunately don't have a quorum present. There are a number of other hearings taking place in St. Paul, so several of our committee members had to attend those, so we're not taking votes, but we are going to have, again, what we call an informational hearing. And so the first bill on our agenda is House File 538, Representative Brand. I don't know if you're supposed to welcome us or I'm supposed to welcome you, but what I traditionally do when an author presents a bill is to say, welcome to the committee, and please educate us on your legislation.
You bet. Well, Mr. Chair, colleagues of the Transportation Committee, thank you for being here today. Welcome to Mankato for this historic occasion. Today is my pleasure to present with you House File 538, also known as the Highway 14 bill.
Oh, you're on.
No, I'm on. Okay, good. I am not the first representative from District 19A to come before this committee to present my case on why funding this stretch of road is so vital to our local economy, or that it just might be the deadliest stretch of road in Minnesota. You will later hear testimony from my predecessors, former Representatives Ruth Johnson, Terry Morrow, and most recently, Clark Johnson. You will also hear testimony from the survivors that have lost loved ones on this road. You will hear from captains of industry that will share concerns with the safety in transporting their goods from factory to store, farmers that transport their grain to market and worry about entering and exiting the highway. House File 538 would appropriate the trunk highway bonds needed to complete the 2 to 4 lane expansion of Highway 14 between Nicollet and New Ulm. These 12 miles represent a final chapter in a decades-long bipartisan effort. Through the Highway 14 partnership, many in the room have devoted significant portions of their lives and careers fighting to expand Highway 14 from Nicollet, or from Rochester rather, to New Ulm. Just saying the words Highway 14 in southern Minnesota can evoke a number of reactions: frustration, dread, mourning. Many of the people in this room are here today because they have lost someone on the Highway 14. In fact, Governor Walz has spoken repeatedly about losing friends and neighbors to fatal accidents on this highway. I look forward to hearing the testimony today and to answer any questions you have afterwards. Without further ado, I call upon our first testifiers to the stand.
Okay, thank you very much, Representative Brand. Is Dave Ubel, the fire chief of the city of Cortland, available?
Make sure you're on, okay.
Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Dave Ubel, Cortland Fire Chief. I want to thank you, first of all, for being here and for allowing me to be here. The biggest thing I want to just briefly touch on, and I know everybody talks about safety, but being the fire chief in town, I've witnessed a lot of accidents on that road, and I truly believe that being a 2-lane, many of those accidents could be avoided. Just to touch base, one of the biggest ones that bothered me was about a year ago, and a lot of we've had more accidents since the 2-lane came from Mankato to Nicollet, just because I think there's more speed and the traffic's way increased. But that accident was an icy road, and the person had crossed the center line, hit another vehicle head on. That person was going to work, and what bothered me is that young man left work that morning, thought he'd see his wife that evening, never got back home, never got to see his kids again. And when I got there, I was the first one there from the fire department, and I thought he looked like he was fine, looked like he was still breathing, and when I took a pulse, he was still warm, and it bothered me a lot. And ever since then, I've kind of been looking more at the traffic on Highway 14. And I guess the other concern I have, and everybody talks about the people, safety of the people on the road, I think a big concern is the safety of the people in Cortland, too. This past year, about 4 months ago, we had a car veer off the road in town, and luckily there was a semi parked on the side of the road. That car hit the semi. Had it not hit the semi, it probably would have hit a house with a very young family with a kid. And like, I know in the past, I think there's been 3 other houses that hit in town. And I know that never gets talked about a lot, but it's probably one of my bigger concerns too, is the amount of traffic and the speed that's coming through town. So we'd like to see it go around town.
Thank you very much, Chief, and thank you for your service as well. Is there any questions for the Chief? Appreciate your testimony. Thank you. Our next testifier is Iona Reinertz. Is Iona here? Thank you very much for being here. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
I'm Iona Reinertz, and I want to tell you just a little bit about my son. My son was 41 years old, and he had a family with 3 kids and a wife, and he was just a loving, loving father, and everybody loved him. One day, he left for work. He took his kids to school, kissed them and hugged them, and I hear that from the teachers all the time. And he left that day and never came back. So me and my husband get a call to come up to the hospital, and you walk into that room and it's like a movie. Like, I walked in there and Gail said, "Oni, there's been an accident, Mike is gone." All I could do was scream. And so every night when we go to bed, it's going to be a year come April 4th, every night I go to bed, I vision that. And we try and cope as best we can, but we get calls from our kids, from the grandkids, saying, "Grandma, I'm sad. My daddy isn't here." And the day of the funeral, my little grandson is 5 years old. He looks at his daddy and says, "Mommy, let's take Daddy home." And Gail says, "If we would take Daddy home, what would we do with Daddy?" And he says, "Well, I'd put him to bed," like he was sleeping. And the next thing he sees is we put him in the ground. And I just want to let you know, just to get that road done, I just feel that if it would be 4 lanes, it never would have happened. And that's really about all I have to say. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I just wanted to let you know that.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for sharing your story, and we're so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Members, our next testifier is Mayor Mark Dean from the city of North Mankato.
Good afternoon, Chair Hornstein and committee. I really appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today, and I want to welcome you to the Mankato, North Mankato area. I serve as the mayor of North Mankato, and I'm also on the executive committee of the Highway 14 Partnership. I come to this role with a little bit of a pedigree. My father was mayor for 2 years in Eagle Lake. He was mayor in North Mankato for 14 years, and then he was county commissioner in Nicollet County for 4 years. When he was mayor of Eagle Lake in 1971, they told him it would take 20 years and $200 million to complete Highway 14 from Mankato to Rochester. Thankfully, last year, the legislature agreed to fund the funding for that and the technical correction bill to make that happen this year, so that perhaps by 50th year anniversary of that conversation, that this road will finally be done between Mankato and Rochester. More importantly, though, from the Highway 14 Partnership perspective, is to complete it all the way to New Ulm. You've heard the safety issues. That road has an inordinate amount of semi-traffic between Kraft Foods, 3M, New Ulm Quartzsite, and the agricultural traffic that are out there that puts an inordinate number of semis on that road and makes it quite dangerous. And you've heard the safety issues. Virtually every member of the community of Mankato and North Mankato have a similar story to the one you just heard about a loss from that highway and its functions over the last 50 years. On the bright side, in 2014, the city of North Mankato, the county of Nicollet, and the state of Minnesota invested $17 million into opening up a new interchange on the west side of our industrial park. That opened in 2014. The citizens of North Mankato dedicated $1.7 million of their local option sales tax to get that interchange done, and then added another $1 million from property taxes, ad valorem taxes, to complete our share of that interchange. That $17 million investment in the last 4 years has now generated $28.2 million in new industrial and commercial growth in our industrial park. And by the end of this year, 5 years after that intersection opens, we believe that we'll have over doubled the investment that was made in there, with more than $30 million of new construction in that area. So these opportunities to expand this infrastructure is going to help us economically, and it's going to help us from the safety perspective. And so we really are hopeful that, that you will be able to get this $85 million finished and finally complete the 14 corridor from New Ulm to Rochester, as we've been asking for more than 50 years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Any questions for the mayor? You know, when you were talking about your dad, it reminded me, and we've had a lot of turnover in this committee over the years, but I think Representative Petersburg and I are sort of the constants, at least since 2012. Do you remember Representative Petersburg? And I don't remember exactly the year, but someone came with some campaign literature from either the 60s or 70s talking about Highway 14. Do you remember that at all? I don't remember what that was exactly.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Matter of fact, I can give you a personal history because I graduated from Claremont in 1970, which was part of the finish that still isn't finished yet. And at that time, we were talking about having that finished before year 2000. So that was back in the mid to late 60s, and so it's been pushing ever since then. So. But
someone, so thank you for that. But someone did bring like a campaign piece or some sort of literature or article about it, so I know that we've been at this for a long time here. And I also appreciated your pointing out that when we make investments in infrastructure, they more than pay back. We make money on the deal, actually, so I appreciated that point.
Okay, very good. Thank you for coming down today.
Okay, thank you so much. Our next testifier is Tim Plath. Is Tim here? Welcome to the committee, Mr. Plath. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Tim Plath. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm principal of Minnesota Valley Lutheran High School, and like many people here, I hope that this gathering will be another stepping stone to the completion of Highway 14 becoming 4 lanes all the way from New Ulm to Rochester. Having traveled Highway 14 back and forth between New Ulm and Rochester and points beyond, I can state with a reasonable degree of certainty that MVL is the only school that is currently located on Highway 14. Highway 14 is a very important part of our school, not only because our property borders it, but also because each day we have 4 buses that bring in approximately 125 of our 215 students from a radius of 45 to 50 miles from MVL. Each of those buses spends at least part of their route on Highway 14. The remaining students drive themselves or are transported by their parents. Yet those buses and students aren't the only ones who are on Highway 14. Think of the number of parents and family members who drive several times a week, in fact, sometimes it's several times a day, on Highway 14 to come to events at our school for athletic events, concerts, fundraisers, and other gatherings. I can safely speak for everyone at MVL when I say that the safety of our students is of paramount importance. In fact, many of those individuals who served on the recent Highway 14 task force shared their concern for the safety of our students at Minnesota Valley Lutheran High School and their families as we discussed the importance of getting this project completed. The transition from the current 2-lane structure to 4 lanes from Nicollet to New Ulm and the addition of the new access points laid out by the representatives from MnDOT will provide a safer travel environment than the current configuration that already exists. We're very thankful for the planning that the MnDOT representatives have done. I urge you to do everything in your power to make Highway 14 4 lanes between Nicollet and New Ulm and get it completed as soon as possible. The safety of our students and families can't be understated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Plath? Thank you for your testimony and for coming this afternoon. Our next testifier is Karen Foreman. Welcome to the committee, council member, and please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Karen Foreman. I'm serving my third term on the Mankato City Council, and I'm president of the U.S. Highway 14 Partnership. We're very thankful that you have come here to hear from us today. We appreciate that. I also want to thank you for the work that you have done on House File 80, which was signed this week, so that we can go forward to work on that area that goes from Owatonna to Dodge Center. It's important to get that done, to do it timely. Our contractors and our workers are incredibly glad that that's going to get started this late summer and fall. Highway 14 the partnership is an organization of cities and counties and chambers of commerce and businesses and individuals all across southern Minnesota. And we're all united about the 4-lane expansion from Rochester to New Ulm. The whole thing. We want the whole enchilada. And you may be asking, what's the glue that's held the Highway 14 partnership together? What's the secret sauce that makes this partnership work? It's 2 things. It's safety and it's economic development. There are absolutely 2 things about Highway 14, safety and economic development. If you remember nothing else about this, if you remember that, that's what's important. You've heard about the safety side of it, and you've heard a little bit from Mayor Dean about what happened in North Mankato. Let me tell you what happened in Mankato. So, we have some farmland. Everybody's got farmland around here. Some big global company comes in and approaches our Chamber of Commerce. You'll hear from them a little bit later. They'd like to bring in a distribution center. They'd like to bring in a distribution center that has 300 jobs, that pay a living wage, that's full-time work, that has benefits. But they need infrastructure. A distribution center needs roads. Okay, so the county, thank you, Vance, came up and did the county road. We have a state highway 22 going one way, and we've got this 14. Now 14 in Mankato has had a bypass for a long time. They've had a bypass for so long that MnDOT's gonna rebuild it. A couple years, I think, a couple years, maybe this year. So we were able to finally complete Highway 14 from Owatonna to Waseca, from Waseca to Mankato. That company was impressed. Global company, bringing in 300 jobs to our community. That company was Walmart. We have the only distribution center for Walmart in the state of Minnesota in Mankato. Now that's economic development combined with what happens in North Mankato. That's 300 people paying income tax that goes up to you in St. Paul to use in your budget. They're paying a big chunk of sales tax that goes up to you in St. Paul for you to use in your budget. I will grant you get a little smidgen of it down here to help with some of our projects. But that's what the secret sauce is. That's what holds this whole organization together, is safety and economic development, and that drives it. I thank you so much for being here. I thank you so much for your work. Some of you on the committee I worked with for a long time, and I'm looking forward to working with the rest of you. I'll pause and take any questions.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Foreman. Questions? Comments? Thank you. We will remember safety and economic development.
Thank you.
And actually I think that's probably a good moniker for just about every project, but I think it's particularly appropriate for Highway 14. Our next testifier is Audra Shanneman. I hope I got that correctly. But you will state it correctly on the record. So welcome to the committee.
Welcome, and nicely done, Representative Hornstein. You pronounced it correctly.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Audra Shanneman, and I am the President and CEO of the New Ulm Area Chamber of Commerce. I am also on the Highway 14 Partnership Board, so thank you to the board for inviting me to come today. We're glad that you're here in Mankato. We appreciate the effort and the time it takes to come out of St. Paul and hear from your constituents. We appreciate that. I also just want to shout out quick to, we are in the third year of some significant road construction in New Ulm. Representative Brand just said, Yes, we are, and it is a challenge. Road construction is always a challenge, but we have been, we're very appreciative of our local leadership in MnDOT District 7. Todd Kajolstad and Greg Oss have just been very good in communicating with our community and the businesses what's happening, so we're grateful for that. I'm here to talk a little bit about the community of New Ulm and why Highway 14 is important. New Ulm is a community of 13,500 citizens. We are home to Herman the German. I'm sure our mayor would love to give you a pen if you don't have one. Flandreau State Park, Martin Luther College, and the second oldest family-owned brewery in the nation. You might have heard of it, Shell's Brewery. Manufacturing is a large part of our economy, and while the community is known for our German heritage, we like to say that the culture of New Ulm is agriculture. New Ulm is a center of commerce. It is the county seat of Brown County. It was mentioned before. 3M, Kraft, Firmenich, Parker Hennepin, Spexis, and Windings all have production facilities in our community. We also have many trucking companies like J.R. Schugel and DNA Trucking. We have 3 school systems, an award-winning New Ulm Medical Center affiliated with Alina, a nationally recognized Oktoberfest celebration, and most recently, our New Ulm High School hockey team brought some great hockey hair to the state tournament. We are a growing community with great jobs and a wonderful quality of life. Today we are asking the legislature, and we're so glad that you're here, to recognize the importance or the important role that regional centers of commerce along Highway 14, like New Ulm, contribute to the state's economic success. We are a center of commerce, but we are not an island. We must be able to safely and efficiently connect to other centers. This is an appropriate role for state investment to ensure proper infrastructure that encourages growth. In 2017, the City of New Ulm updated their housing study and found that approximately 6,000 people commute in some form or fashion to New Ulm for work. We also have over 2,200 people that commute out of New Ulm for work. That's a lot of people on roads. Currently, over 1,000 trucks are dispatched out of New Ulm daily. This is a lot of road traffic. Over 50% of the employees at the New Ulm Medical Center do not live in New Ulm. Therefore, they are commuting into our community. Also, over 50% of the patient visits at the New Ulm Medical Center are people coming from other communities into New Ulm for their health care. These roads are vital to our community and to our economy. For the trucking industry so prominent, traveling Highway 14 on a 2-lane costs them more money and can be a recruiting hindrance. Like many communities, we'd like to attract more industry, but not having a 4-lane to New Ulm knocks us off the list. They like our location, they like our amenities, they like our schools, but they can't get past the lack of a 4-lane road. The business community in New Ulm is represented here today with many other people. I must say I'm very proud of the New Ulm presence here today. We are here to ask and encourage investment in the transportation infrastructure and to make Highway 14 a 4-lane road. New Ulm is experiencing economic growth, and we don't want to be held back by Highway 14, so we're asking for your support today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there questions of the testifier? Representative Runbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I love your enthusiasm. So I'm just curious now that they're talking here in the bill about right-of-way acquisition, engineering, and so on. How much of that is accomplished between here and New Ulm?
I will let someone from MnDOT answer that.
I just thought perhaps you'd be up on that, but
sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Maybe we could ask Shane or somebody from MnDOT. Greg?
Yeah, could MnDOT come to the testifying table, please? Excuse me. Welcome to the committee, and please state your name for the record.
Yes, I'm Greg Oss. I'm the district engineer for District 7 here in Mankato with MnDOT. We have been...
Could you talk a little closer to the mic, maybe?
Okay.
Thank you.
We've been actively working on the pre-design elements of this last segment of Highway 14. As you know, we've had the work that's gone from Mankato to Nicollet and the work that's gone, and we are being accomplished in New Ulm. And so we had a lot of good stakeholder input and support. So we got together and we did some more work to determine where the alignment needs to be. And currently we're looking at trying to get out and do some drilling so we can figure out what our soils look like. And so that we would get ourselves to a place, if money became available, that we could move rather quickly. So, so from that standpoint, that's what we've got accomplished, which is predominantly design work and public engagement work. And we're prepared and preparing to be able to purchase right-of-way if money became available, hopefully this summer to fall.
Mr. Chair and sir, what do you expect of the $85 million that is being requested? How much of that will be for right-of-way acquisition?
So they're all estimates right now, and really our estimate is somewhere between 65 and 85 for the construction of this. We don't have any subsurface information. We want to get that so we can get a better handle on our costs. $9 million is needed for right-of-way. That's our estimate. And then we'll want to accelerate if money becomes available when we would outsource a lot of the design work. So that is about another $6 million. So it's an estimate right now, and we're working to try to clarify what our costs will be.
I see. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Thank you for your testimony. Our next testifier is Jack Kolars.
That means it's going to be a long time yet.
From the Nicollet County Board,
Yes,
welcome.
sir.
Please state your name for the record.
Jack Kolars, Nicollet County Commissioner. I've been on the board for 21 years. All of this Highway 14 lies within Nicollet County that we're talking about. And so I want to welcome you, Chairman Hornstein and former Chair Torkelson, Representative Brand, members of the committee. Also thanks to Ruth Johnson. Clark Johnson is here too, and the many representatives. There's a lot of voices. There's a lot of people who are bringing their testimony to you folks today. I just want to add to it if I could. And again, we thank you for bringing the capital to the state. Your commitment as state lawmakers, one of your commitments is to uphold the state constitution, to construct, improve, and maintain public highways, and assist political subdivisions in doing that work. Now, not always as public officials like state reps or county commissioners or city council members receive thanks for the work accomplished, but I want to thank you folks who were in the 2013 legislature, which created the Corridors of Commerce funding, which was a tool which brought us 12 miles of improved roadway between North Mankato and Nicollet, and is working on the completion down on the other side of Owatonna. So now, here in 2019, we continue to ask the state's help for the funding of Highway 14 expansion from Nicollet to New Ulm to complete this important Highway 14 corridor, which reaches from New Ulm to Rochester. I could talk about kicking the can down the road, and I don't want to do that because there's no road left after a while. Now to the idea for the bold transportation funding plan to improve our roadways and bridges for safety's sake and to ensure economic development. I could spend a long time saying I'm a great supporter of improved gas taxes, but we're not here to do that today. I know that you folks will take that into consideration, that part of the transportation puzzle that is so important to our state. I would like to add, if I could, Mr. Chair, and share with your committee that when funds are granted for this Nicollet to New Ulm project, and I know that they will be, for the expansion of Highway 14, we anticipate in our county about $4 to $5 million local share would be expected from our part of the world. And I'd request that the state at least consider providing enough money funding to cover the local costs of the project. If you can remember that. The cost share from our county would take almost 2 years of our entire state aid construction allotment. Losing our state aid allotment monies in Nicollet County would hurt our ability to complete other projects. I'm sure you can understand. It's important to note that the traffic has been testified here today that utilizes our state aid roads are not just county residents, but residents from across the region. It's also important to note that the state did cover the local share costs of the Highway 14 interchange in Nicollet when that project was completed. I want to thank you again for bringing the state capital outstate. I want to thank you for your commitment to improve Minnesota's transportation system. I'd welcome any questions that you may have, and thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner Kohlers. Any questions?
It's always nice to see Peter again. John, thank you.
Thank you, and really appreciate your testimony. Our next testifier is John Lepke, also from the Nicollet County Board.
Hello again.
Welcome to the committee, Commissioner. Please state your name for the record.
John Lepke, Commissioner, District 5, Nicollet County. And all of this project is in my district. And I appreciate the other commissioners placing it as a priority also, even though they don't live there. Hopefully this will get done. Now, we don't know if it'll get done in 2 years or 20 years. That's the way things go. County Road 12, I just hope you do not cheapen up the interchange there. There's a lot of truck traffic that comes by on number 12 if we ever get number 12 open again, which we should in a year and a half. It's a slow project. So anyway, there's a lot of truck traffic, and it doesn't just come from Nicollet County. It comes from the counties to the north. They bring in corn and soybeans to the feed mill in Cortland, to the soybean plants and corn mill, or the feed mill in Mankato, Lake Crystal, to the plants there, and Fairmont. Traffic count might not be that heavy, but there's a lot of freight on it. So I hope we have a good interchange like the one you built in Nicollet. I hope when you get down to MVL and the quarry, you make it as safe as possible. I know there's a lot of tough things to overcome there. In a previous life, I worked at 3M for 35 years, was in the warehouse a couple of years, a lot of trucks. Vast majority came on Highway 14, and the ones that came daily, I think all came on 14 because they had distribution spots in Owatonna. So they drove the Owatonna to New Ulm every year. Everybody talked about all the plants in New Ulm, the trucking companies, and I am old enough to remember when just to the east of Cortland there was a giant S-curve because there was a railroad track that went over it. And the railroad shut down, removed the bridge, and the S-curve stayed there for several years until it seemed a family got killed every year. And then finally the state said, maybe we should straighten this out. So hopefully, you've heard testimony about the dangers, and hopefully this can get done a little quicker. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I could just ask, since it looks like it's going, as you say, right through your area, and there appear to be some cities, Cortland and Nicollet are both in the county?
Mm-hmm. Cortland is.
Okay. So are there bypasses then that will be part of the design plan?
Yes, they're planning on going to the north of Cortland.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, thank you.
And then that interchange number 12 would hook up with the county road that goes to Blue Earth County through the middle of Cortland going north and south.
Okay, Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Runbeck. Representative Petersburg, a question for Commissioner Lepke.
Well, mainly, I think just to kind of clarify, we really don't have an awful lot of input directly into what projects and the design work that's there. We generally, as policymakers and financial appropriators, appropriate the money that we hope is enough. We can look a little bit sternly and kind of suggest improvements, but when you talk about the actual intersections and so forth, that really is up to the local engineers in the district, and they generally do a good job with community input. So taking that all into consideration, thank you for your concern, and we have the same concerns about intersections as well, but we really aren't involved in the day-to-day operations.
I forgot to mention, besides all those loaded trucks, there's also tractors and wagons going near the feed mill in Cortland. So
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And before we move on to our next testifier, I just wanted to acknowledge and give a warm Minnesota House of Representatives welcome to our local state senator here, Senator France. Yeah. And thank you for being a great champion of transportation in the Senate side. So our next testifier is Patrick Baker from Greater Mankato Growth. Welcome, Mr. Baker, and I think the last time, I don't know if it was a formal hearing or not, maybe I think we just had a community forum, but I think Greater Mankato Growth hosted us at your facility. I don't know if you were there. It was like in 2013 or 14. So.
I was.
Yeah.
Thank you for attending and doing that with us.
Yes, that was a great day. Please welcome and please state your name for the committee.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Patrick Baker. I have the pleasure of serving as the Vice President at Greater Mankato Growth. Greater Mankato Growth serves as our Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development organization for Greater Mankato. We have over 1,000 members in our organization. I also have the pleasure of serving on the U.S. Highway 14 Partnership Board of Directors. I want to welcome you to Mankato and thank you for making the extra effort to travel here to hear from residents of southern Minnesota directly. I'm honored to be here and look forward to sharing with you why investing in transportation infrastructure, and particularly Highway 14, is crucial for the economic vitality of our region. Before I begin, please allow me to thank Representative Brand for his leadership on behalf of our region, and particularly for introducing House File 538. And please allow me to thank this entire committee for your efforts last year and just in the last few weeks to pass corridors of commerce funding and ensure that we could access those dollars this year to ensure making progress on completing Highway 14 continues. Today I'm going to talk about the importance of transportation to support continued growth in our economy and fill in a little bit when Councilwoman Foreman was talking about economic growth here and give you some perspective from our region here in Mankato. As you may have heard, Greater Mankato's economy is experiencing tremendous growth. I want to highlight for you just a few examples that are emblematic of the growing vitality in Greater Mankato. The Greater Mankato region received its designation as a metropolitan statistical area in 2008 and currently has a population of 104,000 in our metro area, up 21% since 2010. Of the 32 metropolitan areas in the upper Midwest, Greater Mankato has the third highest growth in our gross domestic product and the fourth fastest growing personal income, the highest in the entire state of Minnesota on both of those metrics. Last year, Greater Mankato beat the state average in job growth. And in the last 3 years, more than $500 million has been invested in capital projects in our metropolitan area. From a transportation perspective, we continue to be a hub for travelers to our community for a variety of assets, including medical care at our regional hospital and clinic systems, including the region's Mayo Clinic Hospital, education at our 5 colleges and universities that serve 26,000 students, including the second largest university in the state of Minnesota. Retail, we are the level 1 regional trade center with retail spending per capita double all other greater Minnesota metros, suggesting that large volumes of folks travel to our community to do their shopping. Employment, each day our population increases by 61% due to commuting into our economy for working. And transportation logistics, with Mankato processing more soybeans than anywhere else in North America, and serving as a distribution hub for several trucking firms, including the Walmart distribution center that was earlier mentioned. So the key thread in all of this is the need for our community to efficiently and safely move goods and individuals out of and into our market and across our entire region has never been more important. Yet as southern Minnesota's economy is thriving and growing, our infrastructure is not keeping up. You have a graphic that I handed out before you that has those bar charts on there. The bottom line there is 400,000 people live along Highway 14 between Rochester and New Ulm. This is the most populous 100-mile stretch in greater Minnesota, not served by a continuous 4-lane highway. The regional centers of New Ulm, greater Mankato, Waseca, Owatonna, and Rochester add economic diversity to our state and are poised for significant growth. Unfortunately, the lack of a 4-lane highway connecting our communities leaves southern Minnesota without the basic infrastructure it needs to realize its full potential. The road's remaining 2-lane segments not only make the current situation dangerous, but inhibit economic growth and investment. For our region to continue to grow and become an even bigger contributor to the state's economy and the bottom line for tax revenue, we need the support of our state leaders to make the necessary investments that will finally complete Highway 14, thus providing a safe and efficient transportation infrastructure that supports this region's businesses and commuters. Greater Mankato Growth appreciates all the funding the legislature has provided over the past few years to move us along the path to completion of Highway 14. House File 538 is the final piece of the puzzle that would expand the remaining 2-lane stretch of Highway 14 between Nicollet and New Ulm, thus finally fulfilling this region's long-standing goal to complete Highway 14 as an unbroken 4-lane highway between New Ulm and Rochester. As our businesses continue to make significant investments and our region grows and becomes an even bigger contributor to our state's economy, we ask our public partners to do their share and make the necessary investments in infrastructure. Going forward, it's going to be critical that the legislature pass this legislation this year to finally complete this long overdue project and ensure that we have adequate infrastructure that enables future economic opportunities and safety along this corridor. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Questions? Appreciate your testimony and all of your good work over the years, and you really did statistically drive home the point that there is growth. Yeah, so Greater Mankato Growth is doing its job. So thank you. Wade Volk is our next testifier. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
I'm Wade Volk. I'm the operations manager of Volk Transfer. It's a trucking company here in Mankato.
Welcome.
Thank you. First thing that came to mind when I was told Highway 14, 4 lanes to New Ulm, faster service. Operations manager, it's in my blood. But there are certain things that slow it down right now. Cortland, dropping a truck that's 80,000 pounds down to 30 miles an hour. You got your occasional car that pulls out in front of a truck, slows down a truck. That's significant. An 80,000 pound truck takes several miles to get back up to highway speeds. And while doing that, you're expending a lot of fuel, a lot of cost. 4-lane road eliminates that. A lot faster, cost savings for fuel. Safety. I could go on for 20 minutes talking about how a 4-lane road is much better for all trucks. I go back to when I was driving full-time. My biggest issue was that car that pulls out in front of a truck. Happens every day on a 2-lane road. For all my fellow truck drivers. Puts their lives at risk, puts my life at risk, and all my fellow truck drivers. 4-lane roads eliminate that as well. Now you got a car that's just merging onto a road rather than trying to pull out from a stop sign. So bottom line is I save time, I save money, and it's significant safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Folk. Questions? Appreciate your being here. Our next testifier is Mayor Bob Boisman from the city of New Ulm. Again, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Welcome. A very major champion of transportation over the years.
Well, thank you very much, and also thank you. Don't worry about pronunciation. I answer to almost anything because my name is pronounced 3 different ways in Germany, but you've got it right for America. Thank you very much. Sir, I need to just bring back a memory. I think I just spoke to you briefly about this. Early on in my career as mayor of the city of New Ulm, I was asked to speak at a meeting like this, but it was in the Twin Cities. And by the way, you were chair. And as I was expounding on the number of trucks going in and out of New Ulm, and the amount of commerce going in and out of New Ulm, you stood up and said, "That's it, that's the name, we're going to call it Corridors of Commerce." So thank you, sir.
We made history together.
What more can I say other than the fact that when I heard about this, got informed about this plan, plus also when Representative Brand showed me the bill and asked for some support, which I did, I think, I hope you got it. Anyway, I went to a friend of mine who we call Mr. History in New Ulm, and he pulled up some old New Ulm Journal articles. And the best one, and I think there's copies up there someplace, I don't know if you all got a chance to have some or not, but I think the best one I have is the top one on one of those pages that says, "Why wait till 2020?
And remind us on the date of that.
I gave all my copies up
Okay.
there.
It's from January 16th, 1999.
1999, let's do it, but why wait till 2020? It probably won't get done in 2020, but at least I hope we get it started. I've been fortunate enough to be on a committee that has worked with all of the people along that corridor, from West Nicollet all the way to New Ulm. We've had many, many planning meetings. MnDOT has been there at all of them. MnDOT has graciously came up with a plan that our college, Minnesota Valley Lutheran, does not have to lose their softball field. We can do a few other things that we can get that worked out. They've been working very, very hard with our quarry to make sure that those big trucks coming in and out of the quarry are safe. And I noticed that our representative has been supporting us very hard. Thank you very much, sir. But also, every time I talk to him about Highway 14, he says, "Well, why aren't we going all the way to Brookings?"
He's consistent. He says that to us in St. Paul.
He does that to do? Okay.
He's consistent.
Well, from 1960, what did you say that number was, till 2020?
Yeah.
It's going to be long after I'm gone before we get to Brookings.
Well, Mayor, there's the last line in this editorial I want to share with the public, too. It could be a very good tagline for the Highway 14 partnership. We won't get the dollars unless we holler, so let's keep the heat on the state. And I can say that they have kept the heat on the state. So.
Well, we're trying very, very hard, and
There you go.
Fix 14 now. The signs are up, and I believe, Shane, are you here? I believe, Shane, you have a little package of pins, just in case our distinguished guests here in Mankato would care to take home a miniature Herman. Or as our editor in the New Ulm Journal calls him, Pee Wee Herman. Anyway,
thank you, Mayor.
If you do take a Herman pin, wear it with pride. Third largest copper-clad statue in America. And New Ulm, of course, does have the second oldest family-owned brewery. So we're not too far away from Mankato to New Ulm. So if you're in the area, let me know. We'll go have a brew.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Mayor.
very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate it, Mayor. Thank you.
So I think we have a panel. We've heard a lot about Cortland already. And I think we have a panel, actually, of folks from Cortland. Ralph Bentz, Al Poehler, and Pam Rodewald. I don't know if all or some of you are here, but...
I think I'm the only one here.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Good to see
Welcome, and please state your name for the record.
Al Paler, current resident and mayor of the city of Cortland. Appreciate you all being here. We've heard a lot about, North Mankato, New Ulm, Cortland. We're a population of about 700, somewhere around there. We'll see when the new census comes out. But this is, I'm going back to someone saying the pride of this highway, and, safety always is the big talk. And, I can see it firsthand. I've been on city council and mayor now 19 years, and grew up in the city of Cortland as a youngster and have seen the traffic. Some of the things we've heard about the trucking, and that's probably the biggest issue when residents speak to me is, what can we do for safety? How do we get the vehicles to slow down? And it seems like we're just in a fast pace in our world today. Everyone's in a hurry. And the dodging in and out of traffic, we'll call it, is kind of the joke in town, to get in between the cars or the trucks. They are coming in, slowing down, and as someone had said, that takes a while to speed back up. So they're looking at what's beyond Cortland, stepping, the feet down a little. That is the biggest issue for the residents. The bypass to the north, it will impact Cortland on an economic value on what's on our downtown, but the residents and the businesses think we can promote it to keep those people coming in even when the bypass is there. So the safety is the issue for Cortland, to get that traffic out of the residents. If you drive through Cortland, I mean, those houses are literally 5 to 8 feet from the highway. One of the things that I have witnessed that is astounding, we've seen it numerous times, I thought maybe the fire chief would step on it, we actually see people pass inside the city limits because there is a truck that has semi that's slowing down or taking too long. So City of Cortland is on board along with the council. We hope you look at this for funding. I know you hear a lot of the repetitive things, but it is a big issue for transportation. I talked a lot about safety. Even in Cortland, we have 2 transport companies. I've talked to them, and the on and off traffic, we need these gateways and these interchanges so we can get on safely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Poehler. Any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jim Whitlock is next, North Mankato. Welcome to the committee, council member. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you. James Whitlock. Just a year ago, for 90 days from January through the end of March, my wife and I traveled to Rochester to Mayo from Mankato for radiation and chemo treatment for throat cancer. They did get it. I am in remission at this time.
Happy to hear.
But what I wanted to talk about was about 10 years ago at the newly built MnDOT building here in Mankato, there was a meeting somewhat similar to this. And at that time, it was a discussion of the Highway 14. And North Mankato to Nicollet had not been completed at that time. What I wanted to say was, and what I said then, was I'm here as a voice to speak for those that can't. And that's the people that were killed on Highway 14. Al Fallenstein and his wife were killed out there one night. There was a young couple, 2 young gentlemen from Germany riding motorcycle from the East Coast to the West Coast as one of their dreams of their lives. And as they came through Mankato in this beautiful river valley, the one big mistake they made is that they got on Highway 14. And just west of Mankato, both of them were killed in a motorcycle accident. That's what I want to bring to this today, is my voice for those people that have no voice anymore to talk about Highway 14 and the completion of it. That's what I have to say.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. Question? Appreciate your service.
You know, and as long as I've got your ear today,
okay,
I would like to see Highway 15 from St. Cloud to the Iowa border, which would allow us to go to the lakes in the northern part of Minnesota. We don't have to go through the Minneapolis metro area and congest that even more. It's tough to pull a boat through the 35W downtown Minneapolis at rush hours.
Especially now.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councilmember. We have several more people for this bill, and then we'll move on to the next one. But we've got a group from the city of Nicollet. We've heard from some Nicollet County commissioners, but Fred Freilich and Dave Lang are here, and others. So maybe we can hear from Fred first, and Dave, and Joel Polzine. Thank you very much. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Hello, Representative Hornstein and committee members. My name is Mayor Fred Freilich from the city of Nicollet. Our population is 1,129. For decades, we used to hold the title of the deadliest mile on Highway 14.
Sure.
Our crash rates and fatalities were higher than anywhere else in the rest of the state. However, from my citizens and my community and myself, I want to thank you because you fixed it. 3 years ago, we got a brand new highway. We haven't had one fatality. We have not had an injury that I can recall. And I don't know if we've really had any accidents other than a couple of sweet corn semis that went too fast around the roundabouts and laid their trucks over their side. But the highway isn't complete yet, as you well know here with Representative Brand's bill. I think one of the reasons the highway is so treacherous, one is the volume of traffic, but there's one issue I think we kind of leave out of it, and that's Swan Lake. It's the largest prairie pothole marsh in the lower 48 states. It's almost 10,000 acres, and it's only a quarter mile off that highway. And when that wind is blowing, as it is today, and if you drive in New Ulm, you'll see it, it sifts snow constantly across that highway. So it's making that highway continuously treacherous. And by separating the traffic on the way over to New Ulm, the head-on accidents that we've had in the past, and by the way, I spent 20 years on our local fire and rescue too. I saw way too much death and destruction on that highway. Been to multiple fatalities. Seen a 16-year-old young man die from a head-on next to his father laying on the highway. There's other people in this room that have had life-changing events because it's a two-lane highway. So today, I guess I'm asking you, because of the weather conditions that we endure down here with the drifting snow that comes across that highway and the amount of volume of traffic that flows back and forth constantly on Highway 14, I would ask that you support Representative Brand's bill here at this time, and please somehow find some funding to make the Highway 14 safe for our community and for all the people in southern Minnesota to get back and forth to commute to New Ulm. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Questions for Mayor Freilich? Thank you for sharing your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Our next testifier is the Nicollet County Sheriff, Dave Lang. Welcome, Sheriff, and please state your name for the committee.
Good afternoon, Sheriff Dave Lang. I've been behind the badge here for 33 years, the last 16 as Sheriff of Nicollet County. Thank you for being here today, coming down to Mankato. Contrary to what Commissioner Sternberger said, Blue Earth County being the best county, I'm saying Nicollet is. The stretch of road that we're talking about here today is in Nicollet County, and unfortunately myself and a lot of other first responders have had the unfortunate pleasure of responding to all these major crashes and fatal crashes. Anything that you can do to support this bill to get that stretch of road complete is obviously going to make our job a lot better, a lot less stressful. I can tell you, being in this profession, I'll tell you a story. I was at a restaurant a number of years ago, and this guy said to me, "Hey, Sheriff, how are you doing?" I'm like, good. And he looked at me and said, you don't remember me, do you? And I said, well, quite honestly, I can't. And he said, well, you were the one that delivered the death message when my daughter got killed on Highway 14. You know, and that's something that myself and other responders, we just don't want to have to deal with anymore. So anything you can do, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you for your service as well. Questions? Thank you again. Our next testifier is Joel Polzine, he's the fire chief in the city of Nicollet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, Chief.
Joel
State your name for the
Polzine.
record. Yep.
I have been a member of the Nicollet Fire Department for the past 28 years, approximately the past 12 years as chief of that department. Over those 28 years, we have responded to numerous accidents on the Highway 14, some which are very minor, others which have changed lives of many numerous people, some of those people being in this room here today. One of the major acts, well, there have been several major accidents on that highway that have claimed lives of numerous people. Those accidents not only affect us as responders, I have a 25-member department that I supervise. It affects their lives as well as the lives and families of everyone on that stretch of highway. That stretch of highway from North Mankato to Nicollet has, since the expansion has taken place there, that has greatly reduced the amount of calls that we have had to respond to in those areas. We do cover part of the area from Nicollet to New Ulm, as well as Cortland area, where Cortland comes about halfway between us, Nicollet, and Cortland. So we do share some of that highway with them. I'm just here to ask for your support. You know, the accidents, like I said, do affect family members. I unfortunately had a tragic response where I responded to the death of my father, who died on that highway. So it does hit very close to home for me. I am on that roadway daily, and I just would like to ask for your support in making that expansion to New Ulm a possibility.
Thank you very much, Chief, and thank you for your public service as well. Questions for the Chief? Thank you. Our next testifier is Jean Embacher. Welcome to the committee, and please state your name for the record.
My name is Jean Embacher, and I am a survivor, a 31-year survivor of a near-fatal car semi-accident that happened in Nicollet on Highway 14 when it was still a two-lane. As you know, it was two-lane at that time from North Mankato to Nicollet. If the Nicollet firefighters wouldn't have been there, I wouldn't be here today, but that's another day. I was in a coma for 10 to 12 days, total paralysis on the right side of my body for 4 or 5 weeks, and in St. Mary's Hospital for roughly 2 months, where I had been airlifted from Mankato prior to being read my last rites. After being in the hospital for the 2 months, I attended the outpatient traumatic brain injury program at St. Mary's for 5 months. I have a severe traumatic brain injury that I live with the effects of every day, and it's challenging, and it's a blind disability. I would like to, at this time, thank all the people that made it possible and saw the importance in making the changes in rerouting Highway 14 from North Mankato to Nicollet. I thank you for turning the old highway that went through the town of Nicollet into the new improved highway that is now 4-lane highway that is divided, which is safer for using and traveling for all the people that travel that highway now. Sorry, I'm kind of mumbling here.
No, you're doing great.
And it's no longer putting the citizens of Nicollet at risk by having the major highway go right through their town. Today, the Highway 14 north of Nicollet is still 2-lane highway. It worked great for commuters back in the day when there weren't so many vehicles traveling on that road. The road is old and needs to be brought up to today's traffic and commuters' needs and safety. Again, as a survivor of the near-fatal car accident on a 2-lane Highway 14, I ask that this change be implemented as soon as possible for the safety and protection of the people driving on Highway 14.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
For sharing your important story. Questions? Okay. We are about to move on to our next bill, but I wanted to see if there's anyone else in the audience that wanted to testify either in favor or in opposition to Representative Brand's House File 538. Okay, we have a few folks. Okay. And if you could all come up and state your, did any of you all sign in? I know Terry did. I guess we'll, okay, all right. We'll start with Mr. Zimmerman. Because we also have sort of general testimony also. But if people really have something specific to this bill, you can testify now. How about this? Since I know I have a number of people that had signed up for general testimony, we can take them. But please state your name for the record.
My name is David Zimmerman. This might be a little tough.
Welcome.
I was involved in a motorcycle car accident on Highway 14 33 years ago. Put it this way, I was coming home from Mankato. I worked in Mankato and I farmed. I was 25 at the time. I was going through an intersection, and as I went through the intersection, a car turned into me and hit me on the side of my motorcycle. My uniform was blue, and her car hood was white. And I pulled the paint right off her hood. I was transferred locally to St. Peter Hospital. They wanted to take me to HCMC, and I told them I wanted to go to Rochester. So I went to Rochester, and I spent 8 months there. I had 6 operations on my right leg. I had a 6-hour operation on my right wrist, and actually the surgeon that worked on my right wrist was actually a Vietnam surgeon who was known, world known, to put my wrist back together. I asked him after that, how bad was my wrist? Because nobody really said. He said, you know, you could have put a stick of dynamite under it, or you could have drove it over with a semi. He said it would have been worse. And look at it today. But now I still, after all these years, still have physical needs because of that Highway 14 interchange. 2 years ago, I had an operation on my right wrist because I could not feel my fingers, because there is so much scarring tissue in here that it cannot be repaired. They did a carpal tunnel, and a surgeon that did it was all down in Mayo. And he was from England. He said he'd never seen a bad wrist like that. At the time, I was married. I had 1 daughter. I was down in Rochester, and we found out we were expecting our 2nd child. So after I got out of the hospital, 4 days later, I had to go back in the hospital because my wife delivered our 2nd daughter. So put it this way, it doesn't, I don't know, sometimes, I don't know if the loss of my life would have been better, or my disability. All I can say is that, it's harder on the family than it is on the victim. There's only one way in my brain that I describe Highway 14, and AC/DC didn't sing it any better. It is the highway of hell, personally. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for sharing your story.
And I do, like I said, Highway 14 goes to the greatest medical facility in the world. I've been treated by the best there. And one thing about there, if they can't find an answer, they bring somebody in that can. And that's one thing. And there's so many people that I had roommates with that said, Rochester's in your backyard. They've come 5, 6. I had one roommate that came from Florida to come to Mayo Clinic for health. My God, I mean, why can't we? And last year, like I'm a T5 complete. That means I do not feel anything below this level. Last year, I had cellulitis and staph infection that went into my right leg, and I just went to the bed and I thought I had the flu. Here, my wife's finally come in and says, "Well, geez, Dave, you didn't even get undressed." Well, I didn't feel very good. She took my temperature. It was 107.4. And when we called into the hospital, I said to my wife, I said, "You better not tell them it's 107 because they won't believe you." Because, well, she said it was 105. But when I got to the hospital, it was 107.6. And if you look up 107-degree temperature, it's organ failure or death. So, and I'm still paying on that. My hospital visit was $65,000 between my wife's insurance and stuff, and we paid. But I'm still paying for Highway 14. Like I said, the highway of,
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us and the community. Appreciate it. Okay. Former Representative Johnson, you have been in the modern era of state legislators, one of the most passionate supporters of Highway 14, and so I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to testify as was former Representative Johnson. I don't know. Do you want to make it a trifecta, Representative Morrow? This is like the.
Too bad we don't have Carl Johnson with us, too.
You aren't really old timers, but it kind of reminds me of the old timers game, you know.
We've gotten the band back together.
He's looking at me like, what? So, yeah, exactly. So welcome. Do we want to go, let's just go left to right here and go for it.
Good afternoon
State
again.
your name for the record.
My name is Ruth Johnson, former state representative from St. Peter. I'm delighted to see former colleagues and to welcome other colleagues to the Mankato, St. Peter area. We're very glad that you can come today to hear the daily specifics of life with Highway 14 from the people who deal with it, the public officials, the public servants, and the public citizens who have so many important things to tell you. I live in St. Peter, but I have relatives in Rochester and worked on a tri-county board that had its headquarters in New Ulm. So I spent a fair bit of time on Highway 14. And I'm here to tell you we can't do a lot with legislation about the east-west route of a highway that picks the winter winds and the winter ice up so sternly this time of the year. But we can make it safer. And as I have been coming back for years from Thanksgiving in Rochester on a 2-lane stretch there with very slippery roads and high winds, I'm always hopeful I'm going to make it back to St. Peter in one piece. I'm terribly appreciative that Representative Brand would make as his first piece of legislation an important priority the Highway 14 expansion. And I hope the day can come that we will go from Rochester all the way to Brookings, but we would settle right now to get this through New Ulm all the way to the western part of the state. So I commend you for your attention to this concern and wish you well as you balance all the priorities, and I'll keeping my fingers crossed for Highway 14.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. Representative, good to see you again.
Well, thank
Clark
you.
Johnson, we have 2 Representative Johnsons here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's fun to call you Mr. Chair. I want to acknowledge Chair Torkelson as well, and it was enjoyable serving with you as the chair in this committee, but I like it when my side's in charge, so I thank you for being Mr. Chair. But, you know, my first words, as I sat on this committee about 6 years ago, to this committee where I expressed about a collective sorrow in this area about Highway 14. I think you've heard about that today. There's a tremendous turnout of people here, and I want to thank all my neighbors who came here today, and this doesn't surprise me one bit. This area knows about this road, this area cares about this road, and there's thousands more. Countless people have expressed thanks to me for finishing the 4 lanes from North Mankato to Nicollet. And it's a very sincere thanks. It's heartfelt thanks. And I want to extend those to you, and particularly to you, Representative Hornstein. You were the author of the Corridors of Commerce bill, which eventually provided the funding to complete that important stretch of road. But I want to finish you. You've earned it. And I just a side note of that, I think it's interesting that a member who represents the city of Minneapolis authored legislation that has been so helpful to us in greater Minnesota. But you know, all those people who think, almost to a person, the people who have said genuine thank you to me, have also finished the conversation with a stern or a serious or a very heartfelt thought that we're not done yet. And they all remind, almost to a person, those hundreds of people who have thanked me, have reminded me that it's not done until it's done to New Ulm. And so that's the challenge before you. It's a challenge before us for decades and decades and decades. I'd like to just quote the Highway 14 partnership, fix 14 now, get it done, do it right. Please do it. It's important to the people here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Representative Johnson, and you have been such an incredible advocate for not only Highway 14, but really transportation investments all over the state. And you were a real advocate that every part of the state be taken care of and every mode of transportation be funded. So that's always been very appreciated. And an amazing former colleague of mine, Representative Morrow, and we served together under a guy that's mentored both of us, Representative Bernie Leader. And I always appreciated how respectful and how you honored Representative Leader. He was a road engineer who was the Transportation Finance Chair for many, many years up in Crookston, a World War II veteran. And I'm so glad that we were able to share that experience of working so closely with him. And I first learned, I think, about Highway 14 from you and Representative Johnson. So thank you so much for your service.
Well,
welcome.
thank you, Chair Hornstein. Thank you for members for coming down to our area. There's little I can do to add to the stories about Highway 14 that you've heard from those who've directly lived them. But you're right. I think one thing that you see in this table of 4 is a consistent theme of representing constituents whose lives have been deeply, directly affected by this roadway. And yet indecision, delay, and despair continues. And we can stop that now. I sat on this committee. I sat on this committee and had to make the same hard decisions that you all have to make. I sat on this committee in 2007 when a bridge collapsed. I sat on this committee in 2008 when we had the opportunity to push the green button for yes to provide funding for Minnesota's roads and bridges. We've all heard from the folks today from Nicollet County who've described their safety concerns that they have personally experienced. I hope you've listened carefully to the emergency responders, to the families and to the farmers and to the businesses. For Highway 14 is indeed a safety concern. It's also an economic development concern. And I should note that I am now a Nicollet County Commissioner, and I'm proud to be here on behalf of my constituents to talk about the need to get this job done. You have the power and the opportunity to vote for laws and funding to finally fix 14. With your yes vote, we can get from someday, maybe, to someday soon. With your yes vote and the yes vote of your peers in the legislature, we can go from maybe never to fix 14 now. I know that Nicollet County's residents are ready to work with you, excited to work with you. I know that the 4 of us up here today will continue to work with you to do what we can to provide the Department of Transportation the tools it needs to do Highway 14, to do the roads in your districts, and to make Minnesotans safer and to allow economic development to grow. Thank you.
Thank you. thanks to all four of you for just this continuum of activism on transportation and representing this area so ably over many years. So, I think someone else who wanted very specifically to testify in Highway 14, Samuel Steger. Is Mr. Steger here? Welcome to the committee, Mr. Steger.
Hello, thank you. My name is Sam Steiger, Samuel A. Steiger. That's all right, German name, tough on pronunciation, just like the tractor. Thank you very much, Chair Hornstein, for having the ability to come down here and bring the state capitol down to the region. Thank you to Representative Brand and the Traffic Committee in general for this opportunity. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. I work at Minnesota State University Mankato, where I'm a faculty member and also an instructor, staff member in the area of campus recreation. And I had a couple topics that I wanted to talk about that some of them have been covered, so for sake of brevity, I will glance over some of the things that have been said. But I'm a 16-year resident of the Mankato and North Mankato region. I originally came here to pursue a master's degree at Minnesota State University Mankato and decided to make Mankato my home, and I've been here ever since. I consider myself as an emerging professional, although that timeline of me living here has now passed the decade mark, and I'm choosing to raise my own family here in the Mankato region. The connection throughout our region is something that's really important to me, and I've noticed the connection from Rochester to Mankato, and it has impacted my life. I grew up in southern Wisconsin, so the corridor is very convenient for me to travel back to see family. This corridor, though, going all the way from Nicollet to New Ulm, I feel highlights our ability in southern Minnesota as a tourism and attraction feature in the state, also our natural spaces, and then the economic impacts that have been made in our region all could be improved with this corridor connection. Many people have spoken about safety and the importance of safety, including stories that are horrific to go through from the past. The safety that I've heard about and I've also witnessed is the rapidly passing vehicles due to impatience on the two-lane highway, also the cross traffic, some of it agriculturally related that make things tough. Our students in southern Minnesota at times are commuting into our universities and our state colleges, our private institutions that are in our region. So the safety of college students in general in our region is something that's very important to me. I also see an opportunity for the future. Mankato has positioned themselves as the green seam of our region, and our agriculture, industry, and commerce is all linked to the economic growth. I personally am a woodworker, and I buy all my wood at the mill in Cortland, and a bypass would not prevent me from still going to that same mill because I have a dedication to the wood that they produce. I encourage all of you on your way back to the Capitol, perhaps you won't be able to do it, but to drive through that stretch of Highway 14 yourselves. However, I should note that I do not recommend doing that on Saturday or Sunday of this week. The return to the cities, though, shows investment to transportation infrastructure, and it shows the efficiency that could happen and the safety that could happen for a stretch of road through many miles in our region. In closing, I ask you to support the completion of Highway 14 from Nicollet to New Ulm to become safer, more efficient, and an important economic link across our region of southern Minnesota. I'm excited for the future, so although some of the stories from the past had to be gone through today, I envision southern Minnesota as a region that has that corridor intact from Rochester all the way across to the other side of the state. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Steiger. Are there questions for Mr. Steiger? Okay, great. So here's what I'd like to do in terms of a roadmap for the rest of the afternoon. We're completing the testimony now on Highway 14. I know there's a few others that have signed up and others that may want to speak in the general testimony. If you have comments about Highway 14, we can save those for your general testimony. But what we're going to do now is ask the author if he has any final comments about House File 538, and then we'll get on to your next bill. Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And before the author speaks, I'm a co-author on this bill too, and I do want to just comment about the struggles of Highway 14 and what we've been challenging and championing as well. I have to also comment on some of my predecessors over on the eastern part here, former Representative Corey Kath and certainly Connie Ruth, who was very instrumental in getting Highway 14 finished between at least here and over to Rochester. But one of the things that I really was appreciative of is the first term that I was in, I was also in the same term as Representative Clark Johnson, was the Corridors of Commerce program, because I believe that particular program really broke the log jam on really the department having to decide on what projects were, because it gave another opportunity or another, I guess, item for them to consider in regards to the project selection, and that was economic development. And if you look at the economic development and the potential between Rochester, Owatonna, Mankato, New Ulm, and you see the potential there, you realize that now we no longer have to expect that the economic engine, the economic growth, the population growth has to occur in Minneapolis-St. Paul. It actually can occur down here because this is the only corridor between the two that doesn't go through Minneapolis-St. Paul. And it really impacts the fact that we really can have growth out here. We can bring jobs down here. We don't have to worry about the congestion that they have up there, at least at this point. So I've been very thankful for that, and I appreciate this bill coming forward. I think it's something that's been necessary and something that we've been working for a long time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you, Representative Petersburg. And I think, you know, the mayor pointed out, Mayor Boisman, about the Corridors of Commerce program, and it really, you know, I want to thank you here in front of your region. You were a very, very helpful and strong early supporter. We did this together with Representative Clark Johnson and others that year in 2013. It was a bipartisan effort, and we all did this together, and you were such a strong and helpful voice. So I just wanted to appreciate that, or express my appreciation to you. Final comments, Representative Brand?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, colleagues in the Transportation Committee, for coming down to Mankato today to hear this bill. Highway 14, like I had said before, evokes different emotions, different feelings, depending on who you talk to. And I really appreciate all of these friends and neighbors coming out today to support this bill, Highway 14 bill, House File 538, because of its importance and significance to the region. And I really appreciate the fact that some folks came here today to talk about their personal struggles, their personal events in dealing with the aftermath and the events leading up to accidents and tragedies on this road. Those particular stories tug at my heartstrings, and I feel for the folks that have to endure as a result of those. I think that having these folks come here today to testify is a way for them to also find some healing. And so I appreciate the fact that the committee came down here to be a part of that process as well. It's important. It's important for this region. It's important to our sense of community. The last thing I'll mention is something, it's a quick story, but it goes back to February of 2018, when I was a candidate running for this position as representative. And I had the opportunity to attend both public testimony, public information about Highway 14, getting this project from Nicollet to New Ulm shovel ready for last year's Corridors of Commerce round. And I remember standing in front of a map of Highway 14, looking at all the different entrances and exits and all the schematics that you see on those blueprints which at some point you all will have a copy of so you can also study and look at too. And I remember somebody came up next to me and was standing next to me, and I looked over to him and I said, well, what do you think of this project? And he looked at me and he said a couple of things, but one thing that he said stuck with me. And I really want to echo what he said because I think it's the importance of this project, the importance of the here and now with Highway 14. He looked at me and he said, I'm a firefighter from Cortland, and I have to respond to a lot of these calls. And frankly, I'm tired of pulling dead people from wrecks. And so that stuck with me, and I felt it was something I had to share. And it's something that I hope that will help emphasize the importance of this particular stretch of highway and the deadliness, the severity of our regional area, and then what's holding us back from economic development. And before we get on to the next bill, I just wanted to mention that, you know, in keeping in tradition as a newly elected freshman, that sort of thing, I brought treats today. Now, I know you guys had lunch at the beginning, so I didn't mention it, but also in good standing with being a good Minnesotan, I bought more than everybody needs. And so please bring it back and share. It's from River Rock Bakery, so you'll see some cinnamon rolls and also some muffins as well, baked locally from St. Peter. So wanted to get that plug in there too.
Appreciate that.
But that's what I have to say for right now on Highway 14. But I look forward to having a continued conversation with both folks from the House and our friends in the Senate as well on ways that we can work together in this bipartisan fashion that everybody in this last campaign has told me is important, that we work better together. And this is one example of how we can work better together on both sides of the aisle to get this done. Thank you.
I know there's others. We'll have public testimony. Are you here? Do you want to testify on?
I want to stand here and ask all the people from New Ulm to stand up.
Okay, all the people from New Ulm.
Stand up.
All right, Cortland. Can Cortland please stand?
Okay.
Any other places, Representative Torkelson? Okay, Gibbons. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. That was.
We'll be back.
Yes, we know. Well, again, as it said in the New Ulm Journal, we won't get the dollars unless we holler, and I think that's very appropriate. So there you go. So we're going to hear now a bill that was just introduced yesterday. And again, just a reminder for those who came late, we're not taking any official action here, but we are, at least on an informational basis, hearing these two bills from Representative Brand. This one was just introduced officially yesterday on the House floor, and it's House File 2121, and it deals with local road improvement funding. And I just want to say to members of the public, this is a very, very important part of the transportation finance bill that we're going to be putting together over the next month or so. You know, we hear about the state highway system, we hear about the county system, but the local roads are critically important and aren't always part of the established funding formula that the state uses. So this is critical funding for townships, for small cities, and so I appreciate that you're carrying this bill. Representative O'Driscoll, who sits on this committee from Sartell, also has legislation similar to yours, and we heard his bill when we were up in St. Cloud a couple of Fridays ago. So why don't you just very quickly summarize the bill, and then we have 4 testifiers, and then after that we'll get to our public testimony.
Certainly. So as a former city council member from St. Peter, local road improvement dollars have been very important when talking about expansion of communities, expansion of St. Peter in particular. And when I saw the governor's proposal for local road improvement dollars, I immediately jumped up and said, we've got to carry this bill and we've got to run with it, because it's really important to folks all over the state, but particularly it's important because of the frustrations I felt with local road improvement dollar access in previous years as a city council member. And so for me, the local road improvement program is important because in St. Peter, there's a highway. It's actually a township road that the city has taken over maintenance of. And it's just a dirt road. It's just a small section dirt road And what it would do if folks in St. Peter, obviously we'll have a testifier, Todd Prafke, he's the city administrator from St. Peter, but also other people across the state of Minnesota, if they've got road improvement projects that they can't find funding for locally, this is a great opportunity for them to apply for. And I think it really makes a good difference for communities across our state when we talk about transportation in a way that gives people better access to those roads, better access to those schools, better access to those places of commerce. And so for this particular bill, you know, I think it's really important that we talk about this local road improvement program. In the last round, it was communicated to the city of St. Peter that there were no funds available, and at the point the city of St. Peter was asking for $1.6 million for that local road, that Highway Township Road 361. And what that $1.6 million in particular would have done would have provided curb and gutter and a road that's not a dirt road, but rather a regular road that doesn't kick up dust as students are practicing in those soccer fields and those baseball diamonds and those football practice fields as well in the afternoon after school, when those people are also getting off of school and using that road to go home from work and school. And so I've got a couple of testifiers that I wish to ask to come up here, although I was expecting around 2 o'clock that we'd be having this part of the testimony because of the
You want a filibuster?
Yeah. So I'm not sure if anybody's here.
If they're not, we can start with our public testimony.
But we could do that as well, and then
well,
come back
so
to it.
I guess it's the folks I have are Todd Prafke, Mark Kober, and Steve Nasby or Nasby.
Nasby, yep.
Are any of the three here? Okay, great. Well, you've got 2 of the 3, so why don't we invite them up and
glad to hear it. Yep.
Can testify.
Yep.
And after these
Steve, yep.
gentlemen testify, we'll move on to our general public testimony.
Good to see you, Steve. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Mark Kober. I'm the city manager in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota. And I'm here on behalf of the League of Minnesota Cities. I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and all the committee members for coming to outstate Minnesota and sharing your work with us here in Mankato. In a special way, I want to thank Representative Paul Torkelson. 12 years of working with Paul on transportation issues and issues in Sleepy Eye in general has been a great pleasure, and he's a stalwart for our area of Minnesota. I would like to thank the committee and the legislature for the LRIP program, because we introduced a program to go north of the tracks in Sleepy Eye about 20 years ago with DM&E. Sleepy Eye is a town of 4,000 people, and we only have 2 roads that go to the north side of town. One's Highway 4 and one's First Avenue. And oftentimes First Avenue is closed because of traffic on the rail. So we wanted to cross the tracks again, and 12th Avenue project was one of those. And until we received about $750,000 worth of LRIP, it wasn't a possibility. So next year we break ground on that project, and we're very excited about that. It's going to be a great avenue for the community to move north. Everything new in Sleepy Eye basically is built on the north side, so it's good. One of the other things I would ask the chairman and committee to consider is that LRIP is not eligible on CSHA roads right now. And we're going to open First Avenue in Sleepy Eye too with Brown County. We have about $500,000 worth of local expenses on that project. So we would love to see the committee consider including CSHA and federal highways as far as local share on that as well. With that, I would say thank you again, Mr. Chairman and committee, for coming into southern Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. Kober. Any questions? Representative Torkelson. Sleepy Eye is in your area.
Sleepy Eye is in my area, Mr. Chair, and I don't know the exact date, but Mr. Kober is going to soon be retiring from his position as city manager. I don't know if this is your last public performance or if there's more coming.
Probably the last testimony, probably.
Yeah, well, so ladies and gentlemen, I mean, this is members of the public, we're seeing a little bit of history here. This is kind of like the farewell tour. It's like Elton John's last show or Paul Simon.
There you go. Thank you.
So,
Perhaps City Manager Colbert would like to sing for us.
Not particularly.
But I'd just
Thank
like
you.
to acknowledge his fine work over the years and look forward to him enjoying his retirement.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you for your service. Thank you. Witnessing a little Sleepy Eye municipal history here. Well, it looks like your entire complement has arrived. So who wants to go next? Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Steve Nasby. I'm city administrator in Windham, Minnesota, a town of about 4,600 people. I'm also here on behalf of the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. We're here to support Representative Brand's bill for some additional local road improvement funding. I want to tell you that this money is critical to communities like Mark's and mine. We don't get gas tax money. So there's really, we're just under that 5,000 threshold and we don't get any of those dollars. So having something else is vital to us. It needs to be consistent and something that we can depend on. In prior years, we got some of that money. It helped out tremendously. The little bit of money we got, we put into seal coating and other preventive maintenance so we can make our streets last longer. And then we came into the program that Mark had used, and we got a project together. We weren't quite able to meet the deadline to apply the first time, so we had everything ready to roll. And then it came out, oh, there's not going to be any funding in the program for this year. So then that application sat, and then it came back to life, but not in a cycle where we could take advantage of it. So it's important that we got some funding to be consistent so we could count on it year to year, so we know that it's coming and we can kind of plan what to do with it in our budget and with our tax take from our citizens. In looking at the LREP funds, if that's what we're going to acronym this, Representative Brand, maybe you can tell me what was the ask in that program?
100 million.
All right, for 100 million. So
that's
that
what the governor's proposal was.
for statewide. Okay, thank you. That would go a very, very long way to helping many communities our size and also ones of a little bit larger size, as my colleague, Mr. Prafke, will testify to. So thank you for coming out to Greater Minnesota. We do appreciate it. We appreciate your support of highway funding. As I sat here and listened to all the testimony on Highway 14, it made me relive my Highway 60 testimony and all the people we had at those hearings. And so fortunately, those dollars did come through the gas tax increase the last time we had it, with Representative Hamilton leading the way. And Highway 60 has been completed to 4-lane as of this fall. So that was a huge triumph for us, and thank you to the funders here and to MnDOT for making that happen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nasby. Our last testifier is here, Mr. Prafke.
Mr. Chair, how are you today?
You're very well, and welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Todd Prafke, and I'm the city administrator in the city of St. Peter.
Welcome.
Thank you. So we too are supportive, obviously, of the funding request that's brought before you and before the whole state. We have been a user of LRIP funding, and Kyle, you're going to hear a bunch of times we can all use more money, we could all use more money. So I don't want to give you that one. Let me give you a little bit of a different one that I think is equally important as we think about communities that have opportunity to grow. For us, those LRIP dollars went into a roadway that we didn't necessarily own yet, that was owned by a township, that was next to a brand new high school, that was interconnected with 2 county roads. It was really an opportunity for us to continue to have joint planning with some results. Not just planning and nothing happening, and all of those groups participated in not only the plan overall, not only design overall, but in portions of the funding for that in addition to what we received in LRIP funding. So in our instance, we matched those dollars. So it wasn't just money that you gave us, it's money that we matched, and we're able to work together again with the county, the townships, and the high school, and planning a nice area. If any of you are through St. Peter and you go down County Road 5, or what in St. Peter we call Broadway, you'll see the new high school out there, and it provided this wonderful opportunity for us to make all that interconnect nice, clean, and maybe most importantly, very safely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prafke. Any questions for Mr. Prafke? Great. Well, we really appreciate your testimony, and you know, as Mr. Kober said, you know, this fills a very important void, and you know, because the kinds of projects and issues that you were describing aren't covered under the traditional highway user formula that the state has. So we're always trying to figure out new and creative ways to fill that void and to make sure your communities share in the transportation, you know, funding rubric that we're putting together. So this is really helpful and really important, and I appreciate it. Are there any questions of anyone? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a question for the testifiers, but I assume we're about at the end of this
Yeah,
bill.
so what we'll do, once Representative Brand just makes any final comments he wants to do on this House file, we'll open it up for, we have names on the public. Did you want to testify specifically? Yeah, so we have a list of names that were given to us. If you don't feel that, if you didn't call ahead of time or give Mr. Howe your name earlier but still want to testify, you will have a chance to. But we will have to leave it, you know, at 3 o'clock. So we want to make sure that the members of the public keep their testimony to a couple of minutes. One other thing, this is a news flash. You mentioned that this is the governor's language. I wanted to announce to members of the committee that we will be hearing the governor's bill in our committee March 21st. Now, that's not necessarily the exact bill that will come out of this committee. There are a number of ideas the governor has that I find to be very helpful, that have merit. But the committee itself will be authoring its own transportation bill and bringing that to the floor. But we will hear the governor's ideas formally on March 21st. So wanted to give you a heads up for that. Okay. Question?
Yeah. We're about at the end of...
Yes. Representative Brand, did you want to make any final comments?
Well, I would like to make a comment.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. Cool. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that. I risk getting into the weeds of transportation funding.
That's what we're here for.
But this bill addresses bond funds, which certainly have been used many times for local road, local bridge work over the years. Bond funds, of course, are not necessarily all that dependable. Some years we are able to work local roads and bridges into the bonding bill. Other years it's been more difficult, and the level of funding varies a lot over the history of bonding. In the last couple of bienniums, we've worked hard to try and weave some funding for small cities, local roads, and local bridges into the regular budget of the transportation area. And it's my hope that that will continue, that we will continue to put that dependable, predictable source of funds to work also for our local roads, local bridges, and small cities. It's a bit of a change from what we've done in the past, but I think it's an appropriate change, and I would hope as we, as you, Mr. Chair, formulate a final bill, and as the governor perhaps reorganizes his effort a little bit, because he happens to have left those out of his proposal, that we find a way to work that back in, because I think that's really important, that we provide that secure, more dependable, more predictable source of funds for these local projects that we were able to do in the last biennium. Thank you, Mr. Chair and author.
And I appreciate that, and it's an excellent point and one we really do need to consider. Final thoughts, Representative?
Final thoughts of the 800...
On your bill.
Yep, of this particular bill and the LRIP, of the Local Road Improvement Fund, I would just say that the 853 communities across our state that exist, 705 of them don't receive any dollars from the gas tax. They're 5,000 or less cities, and so there's a lot of them. And we want to make sure when we talk about what we do at the legislature, we remember that idea of community and community vitality. And it's apparent that this particular funding source is community vitality. And so thank you very much for listening to the bill today.
And thanks for your, all of you, the hard work you put into turning out the testifiers, and it's a full partner and participant in this meeting. We really appreciate it very much.
Do that.
So we're going to shift now to some of the names we have that have called ahead of time, that have signed up today. our first testifier. We've heard from him earlier today, who's welcomed us, but I want to bring up again the big champion of transportation, Van Stuenberg. And again, my guidelines, and I hate to say this to a fellow elected official, but we do need to get back, and so 2 minutes, 2.5 at the most. We're ready to hear from you again, Commissioner. Welcome back to the committee.
And thank you again. My name is Vance Stuenberg. I'm a commissioner here in Blue Earth County, and I am chair of the Association of Minnesota Counties Transportation Steering Committee. Welcome to Blue Earth County and the greater Mankato area. We bring strong support for the House File 538, which would fund the last critical link of Highway 14 from Nicollet to New Ulm. And this is not only extremely important for safety, but also for commerce. This you've heard today. With this is an area with great agricultural and industrial importance. We are keenly aware of the transportation issues, and it is not only a strong requirement for our farm to market, but also with all of our industrial and retail businesses. We are concerned not only with state highways and county state aid roads, but also city and township roads, as they are all connected and affected. With our D grade for our Minnesota roads and our C grade on our bridges, we've got a lot to be concerned about. Currently, Minnesota counties maintain 30,742 miles of county state aid highways and 14,141 miles of county roads, totaling 30% of the total highways in the state of Minnesota. Counties and other local agencies also oversee 15,205 bridges, 75% of all the bridges in the state of Minnesota. 920 of these are structurally deficient, 80 are waiting for replacement, and we need $100 million of bridge bonding to take care of this. With all these responsibilities, there's a total annual need of $1.084 billion over the next 25 years just to maintain the current CSAH and county road system, not including expansion. Overall, the funding gap, including truck highway, county, city, township systems, are $1.1 to $1.5 billion in a shortage over the next 20 years. That's annually. To take care of this, we need a solution that is robust, comprehensive, and sustainable, and includes new revenue for roads, excuse me as I change my pages here, bridges, and transit. AMC, or the Association of Minnesota Counties, has always been supportive of all the above approach. That includes gas tax, tab fee increases, electrical vehicle surcharges, transportation-related general fund dollars, and possibly something new that we haven't even thought about. What we know is new revenue is needed, not only for truck highways and CSAH roads, but also non-CSAH county roads, city streets, and townships across the states. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't go over my 2.5 minutes.
I appreciated what you had to say.
God bless you. And welcome to Mankato, and thank you for showing up here.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner. We have a few folks from LIUNA, the laborers union, and they have attended every one of our hearings, and there are 3 people who I believe have signed up, and I don't know if all 3 of you want to come up together. That would be great. 2. I have Stacy, Carol, Sheldon Steele, and Julie Kent.
Stacy, how are you? Good to see you, sir.
Thank you, committee and chair. My name is Stacy Carrolls. I am a resident of Good Thunder, Minnesota, southwest here. And I am a business agent and a proud member of Labor's Local 563. I got some notes here. I'm here today to support in the proposed 20-cent gas tax dedicated to roads and bridges. That is phased over the next 2 years. Labor's Local 563 has over 10,000 members in the state of Minnesota that has the privilege to work on many of these roads, bridges, and highways, and to make a good living for themselves and their families. We all know how far behind the ball the state is in funding and maintenance of all these roads, and there is a big gap. This money is not only breaks the gap, but it sets up funding to keep the state from falling behind again. Let's not keep kicking the can down the road and pushing our local municipalities and our local county to raise their own taxes to make up the difference. Let's pass the new gas tax for indexed and inflation dedicated to fixing our roads, bridges, and transportation infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carrols. Next, welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Chairman and committee members. I'm Julie Kent. I live in Delavan, Minnesota, and I am a proud member of the Building and Construction Union Laborers 563 out of Mankato here. My job, for the most part, every year is doing traffic control. I'm the flagger out there that everybody likes to not smile at. I ask you to consider this tax increase, gas tax increase, to provide this money and allot it to road construction and the repairs and replacement of our bridges for basically the safety of all of us, and not to mention our kids and grandkids. I feel this, if you use the road or drive in the state and you pay this extra tax, it's just going to help to further the safety and improvement of our roads. And with that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kent, and I just wanted to mention to you that we have several bills before our committee that we're hearing and considering that do relate to flaggers and safety issues that you encounter.
And I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last LaUna testifier, please state your name for the record.
Sheldon Steele. Thank you, Chair and committee members. I live in Grand Meadow, Minnesota, not too far from here. Proud member of Local 405, serving the Rochester area. My brothers and sisters in the building and construction trades are proud to build Minnesota's roads and bridges. I'm here today to ask you to fix our roads and bridges to ease congestion and improve safety, and I believe that's been covered very well today. Minnesota's crumbling infrastructure is putting our safety at risk. A recent independent report found that there are more than 1,000 Minnesota bridges and hundreds of miles of roads that are in poor condition. Our children deserve a safe transportation to school. Our first responders deserve safe roads. With better roads in better condition and with less congestion, our friends and neighbors' lives will be saved with faster response times. A 20-cent gas tax increase would make Minnesota safer and ensure nothing like the I-35 bridge collapse happens again. Please vote for the 20-cent gas increase, indexed to inflation, dedicated to fixing our roads and bridges and transportation infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Steele. Thank you to all of you for your work every day and your advocacy. It's very much appreciated. So I'm going to say who the next testifier is and then the testifier after that so people can get ready. Our next person on the list is Carol Clark, followed by Kirk Kuchera. Welcome to the committee, Ms. Clark. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Carol Clark. I'm the transportation manager for True Transit, public transit service that is managed by a nonprofit called Vine Faith in Action. In 2017, we were granted our first public transit grant from the state of Minnesota to provide public transit service in the rural parts of Blue Earth, Nicollet, and LeSueur counties. These counties previously had no county-wide transit system. And I'm here today to ask for your continued support in now and in the future for all of our public transit systems in rural Minnesota. We have, in 2018, we started our buses on the road. And since then, we have found many people in the rural parts of our counties that have needed help getting to dialysis, to cancer treatment, facilities and general shopping and other medical needs. And it's important for us, now that we've just got this system on the road, and we are hearing from more and more people all the time that need our services, that we keep it going. I don't want to pull it back off the road when we've just getting it going. Some of our future needs will be, of course, more buses, some more drivers. We are in constant need of more drivers, and you'll probably hear more about that yet. And we need those drivers to be qualified and not just any person off the road. We need them to be good citizens for the people that we are carrying. Also, our needs are for our volunteer driver program. We, for 22 years, our nonprofit has ran a volunteer driver program to assist people within Blue Earth and Nicollet County, and we were able to enroll that volunteer program into our public transit program. And it's been a very successful part of it, because it gives us the opportunity to not have to drive the buses all over the county when we have a volunteer that's able to do it. And it's also nice because they can give that little extra assistance. However, the problem is when we have contracts that we're working with for Medicaid, for the state medical assistance programs, for our volunteer drivers, we can't get full federal reimbursement for them. So these people that are doing it out of the, just out of the need that they have to help their neighbor can't get full reimbursement for their mileage that they're doing. They can only get it when the people are in their car, and it's a smaller amount than the federal reimbursement rate. So nonprofits and other organizations are taking it upon themselves to make sure that they are getting whatever they can do to help them with that rate. And also, as insurance, we need your assistance, because the insurance wants to call these volunteers for hire. They're not for hire, so that they shouldn't have to pay that extra price for that insurance. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Clark. Kirk Kuchera, followed by Al Forsberg. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Kuchera. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Kirk Kuchera, Operations Manager for Smart Transit. We're a transit agency here in southern Minnesota. We serve Freeborn, Mower, Steele, and Waseca counties. We've been around since 2014 it was a consolidation of 3 different counties. We currently have about 70 employees. We cover nearly 2,300 square miles and assist, approximately 125,000 citizens have access to our public transit in our 4 communities. We've been fortunate enough to build some great partnerships in our communities. We're assisting a lot of individuals, a lot of elderly people, offering some independence to them. Maybe they're not able to drive or don't have the resources. So we're helping get to medical appointments and different things like that. And ultimately, we're just here to ask for continued support of public transportation here in rural Minnesota. Some unmet needs in the future as the need continues to grow, roughly 10 to 15% each year we've grown in ridership numbers. Those unmet needs continue to be capital improvements, buses, building and infrastructure, as well as other service additions for preschool to get children to early education programs, demand response service hours, and as well as deviated route service hours. So thank you for your time, and look forward to continued support.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Excuse me? Okay.
Just wanted to...
A quick question. We were trying to keep those to a minimum,
Okay.
but I'll yield to you, Representative Rembeck.
Right. The question has to do with, the sparsity of the area, and have you found ways to be, how do you be efficient, I guess, with the routes and the pickups and
yeah, so we have routing software that we utilize that assists greatly, and just with the partnerships that we have with different programs in our communities, whether it's United Way, Parenting Resource Center, we're able to devise efficient routes, and in some cases we're hauling 18, 20 kids in an hour to preschool. That's one example. And so we're able to, in fact, I should mention maybe our programs over the last 6 years, we've been named the Transit System of the Year by MIPTA, and part of that is because of the efficiencies that we have and the ridership gains that we have year after year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And is Mr. Forsberg still here? Or? Okay. We have several people from the city of Franklin and someone from the city of Montgomery to speak about the issue of small cities. And maybe everyone could come up together. That might be good. Again, this relates to the previous bill that we had. And again, trying to find some creative ways to fill the gap that exists, and Representative Torkelson addressed as well, very eloquently.
Yes.
You know, this little, not little, but problem that we have to fill the void in funding for small cities. So.
Yes. Thank you, Chair.
So please state your name for the record.
I'm James Robbins. I'm representing an association of small cities, and I have a couple testifiers from Montgomery and Franklin with us. And yes, we are supportive of bonding for local road improvements as presented by Representative Brand. Thank you. And thank you, lead member Torkelson and division members. I do appreciate this. I'm just going to answer a specific question, a seminal question that was raised in our first hearing in St. Cloud. What was the rationale for excluding cities with populations 5,000 and under from having a share of dedicated highway user funds? That was from Representative Elkins, who isn't here today. The current constitutional structure, including authority for the dedicated gas tax and tab fees, was approved by voters in 1956. Previously, the system relied on property taxes primarily. A 1954 Blue Ribbon State Highway study concluded, quote, the county road extensions and other arterial streets in municipalities below 5,000 population should be the responsibility of the counties. This policy is recommended because it is believed that the counties are more able to administer highway user funds by utilizing engineering staff and facilities provided for each by law. Now, a similar report came out 2 years later, quote, to meet the problem of inadequate local roads and streets and the likelihood of greater deficiencies in the future, constitutional and statutory changes would be necessary in the use of highway user funds. So now we're 63 years later. Citizens are still living along those non-MSA funded streets in cities both small and large. They pay for them primarily with property taxes. Those folks also pay their tab fees and the gas tax. So the problem remains. Especially in small cities, we have very low tax capacity in most of the cities, not all of them. But what we really need to do is do something about this heavy burden because it's not fair, it's not equitable.
Thank you. We'll get to your folks. I'm looking at Commissioner Morrow, and there's a couple of things that Commissioner Morrow brought to my attention when we were sort of starting out together in transportation. One was this issue of small cities, and the second one that I remember he always talked about was that Nicollet County was one of the only counties that didn't have transit service in the state, and I understand now, of course, we heard from SMART, and you do have that now, so good work. Let's keep it going. So, so welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
I'm Brian Heck. I'm the city administrator for the city of Montgomery. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for having this hearing down here. I am representing both the Minnesota Association of Small Cities and the city of Montgomery. You've been inundated with information about the condition of state highways, county roads, and local roads. One-time funding through bonding is nice, but for communities like ours, and speak on behalf of my colleagues from Wyndham and Sleepy Eye, who are also under 4,000, our road maintenance programs are dependent upon the ability to raise the taxes on the residents. All of our maintenance and all of our construction is borne 100% by the property tax. We also have several entities in the community, schools, churches, and others that don't pay property taxes, and yet they bring in a large number of people into our community that utilize our roads. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of numbers, but about 40% of our streets are ready to go back to gravel. And to be honest, it's a lot cheaper for us to maintain a gravel road than it is to maintain an asphalt road. We just did a 3 or 4 block area of a reclamation. It cost over $500,000. All of that was paid by property taxes and special assessed to the people on that street. A full reclamation is going to cost several $1,000,000. We'd have to bond for it, special assess for it, and we get no state aid. I had a resident, I'll close with this story. I had a resident call last week, and this individual bikes on our roads, and he bikes 7 miles north to the city of New Prague, which is about 7,000. And he was wondering why in the world New Prague has much better maintained streets than the city of Montgomery. And I said, because the city of New Prague gets about $275,000 a year in construction dollars and about $75,000 a year in maintenance money for their municipal state aid streets. We don't get any. And he asked, well, how come they get it and we don't? Because they're over 5,000 and we're not. And oh, by the way, you're funding New Prague streets because you tab your car and you pay sales tax or gas tax. None of that comes back to us. And his response was, well, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. We probably pay more in gas tax than other people because we drive further when we go to the cities and other places like that. So even the residents of our community who rate our roads as the #1 priority for us to fix realize that the system is somewhat inequitable. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Heck. Our next testifier, please state your name for the record.
My name is Wendy Peterson, and I'm on the board of the Minnesota Association of Small Cities, and I'm the city clerk treasurer for the city of Franklin. And just to kind of reiterate, Franklin's a population of about 500 people. We have 5 miles of roads in our city. 3.5 of them are paved, and 1.5 we can't afford to pave. A complete reconstruct of a typical residential city block costs about $110,000. And to put this into perspective, our general fund budget for 2019, $437,000. The street budget alone included in that is $99,000, and $20,000 of that is set aside to replace a tractor. So with that, with only 200 households and about 15 businesses, we just simply can't raise taxes to repair our streets or place an assessment on the adjoining properties. And this scenario, as you've heard, isn't unique to Franklin. There's over 700 small cities under 5,000 that receive no state aid or county dollars for our streets. So the burden falls completely on our taxpayers. So we're just asking for some dedicated, sustainable funding to be put into place for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your testimony and, again, helping us out with filling this important void that exists in our funding formula. So our next testifier is Jason Swanson, followed by Lisa Black. Is Jason here? Jason, then Lisa. And again, just a reminder, we want to make sure that everybody who has signed up has the chance to testify. So if you keep it to 2 minutes, then we can make sure everybody has a chance.
Very good.
Good
afternoon.
Reminding you of that.
My name is Jason Swanson. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota River Area Agency on Aging. Members of the Transportation, Finance, and Policy Division, thank you for allowing myself and Tiffany Collins to come before you today. We want to speak to you in relation to volunteer drivers in rural Minnesota. As you're aware, there is a lack of adequate transportation for our senior citizen population, especially here in our rural setting. Many available transportation options are through our volunteer drivers, who willingly give up much of their free time to assist their friends, their neighbors, and at times complete strangers. Without their services, the volunteers, these individuals will be canceling appointments, moving appointments to coordinate with family members, or simply waiting too long to call an ambulance. I would like to now introduce Tiffany Collins. She is the Transportation Director for Central Community Transit. She will better describe the effects that calling a volunteer driver a hired driver and the effects that current insurance companies are now putting in place are misinterpreting what these volunteer drivers do.
Thank you. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Tiffany Collins. I'm a transit director from the Central Community Transit. I have been the transit director for 20 years for public transportation. I'm just trying to bring light to the volunteer drivers and the importance of them. They are a lifeline for our seniors in rural Minnesota. They volunteer their time and their vehicle to provide transportation that is necessary to medical appointments throughout the state of Minnesota. Many areas of rural Minnesota do not have access to transportation options such as special transportation providers, public transit, Uber, or Lyft. Many volunteer drivers are expecting to be reimbursed the federal IRS rate, which is 58 cents. An example of a trip from Franklin into New Ulm, as we provide a lot of transportation in the rural areas and in the southern part of our service area need to come into this area. So an example of that is a volunteer driver would be reimbursed approximately $38.28 for a trip from Franklin into New Ulm. If we need to have a hired driver or run a bus for that transportation, in relation to that transportation would cost $162 for that transportation. In recent years, volunteer drivers are being considered hired drivers by insurance companies. This is having a very devastating effect on their insurance premiums. Therefore, volunteer driver numbers are decreasing across the state at an alarming rate. Many drivers are volunteering between 3 to 5 days per week. A single driver lost would reduce the availability of approximately 260 rides per year. Our system has lost over 20 drivers in the last year alone. By categorizing volunteer drivers for hire, this is raising insurance rates for them and forcing these drivers to discontinue their work. I would like to thank Representative Wolgamut and Representative Petersburg for the authorizing a bill to prevent volunteers from being considered for hire carriers and forcing the higher insurance premiums for them.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Our next testifier is Lisa Black, followed by Bonnie Dinsmore.
Hello, committee. I'm Lisa Black. I'm an advocate for rural transit. It's fun to see Ruth Johnson, Terry Morrow, and Representative Clark here, as well as Representative Torkelson, because you've heard my personal story before. Because I've been writing letters since 1995 regarding rural transit. And a special thanks then too also to Dr. Vogel, because I contacted John Howe as soon as I heard about this committee hearing here in Mankato. I was so happy that you come down here to southern Minnesota so I can get here. And then again to Dr. Vogel, because I was calling friends and family, who can take me to Mankato for 3 hours? And as soon as I heard, day before yesterday, that there's a bus coming, I thought, oh, I got to sign up. I called New Ulm, and they said, yeah, I'd love to have you. So I need to put a plug in, for 14. I'm a graduate of MVL. 88 is really great. I have 2 children who attend there now, my sons. They're both very active. So they often have to drive to New Ulm for after school because of to school because of after school activities. It scares me. When I was there was no turn lane off the Highway 14 to the township road. It scared me every day going to school or activities. Now I just pray every day when the kids leave for school, Lord, bring them safely home. I fear for their safety. So Fund 14. Fix 14 now. Support House File 538 to reconstruct Highway 14 between Ulm and Nicollet with 4 lanes and the proper turning lanes to access the Minnesota Valley Lutheran High School safely. Fix 14 now. Now, again, I've been advocating for transit since 1995, which will become clear very soon. You should all have a resolution that I submitted to Mr. Howe to be given out to each of you. My resolution for providing funding for inter-county public transportation. I think as the previous testifiers just requested. Whereas county transportation systems are currently underfunded, whereas there is a need to serve unincorporated and township areas, whereas most county systems are currently limited to travel within their own county, although there are many who need to travel outside the county they live in into neighboring or other counties, whereas many people, including elderly, disabled, and others, would like to have more public transportation available, whereas development of an inter-county transit system would improve the quality of life for all persons, enabling them to participate in activities and events in all of Minnesota's communities, whereas an inter-county transit system would realize a decrease in the amount of vehicles on major routes, decreasing traffic congestion, saving road conditions, improving air quality, as well as decreasing fuel consumption. Be resolved, the state of Minnesota provide funding to the Minnesota Department of Transportation and the Minnesota Department of Human Resources, and the Minnesota Department of Human Services to work with the already established county transit systems to provide a transportation network for all Minnesotans, disabled or not, for transportation between all points in Minnesota, including points in Minnesota's townships and rural areas, regardless of the county travel from, through, or to. Help me get there.
Thank you very much. We have a copy, too, of the resolution. We'll make that available to our members, and I appreciate your testimony very much.
Also, Lisa, hier musst du nur auf Englisch sprechen, sonst verstehen sie dir gar nicht. In December 1992, exactly 3 months after having returned from a year of study abroad in Germany, I was in a serious car accident, giving me numerous broken bones and a traumatic brain injury that put me in a coma for 5.5 weeks. I came out of that coma speaking the language that had been my host for 13 months, just 3 months previously. Thus, I had to be told, Lisa, here you speak only English, otherwise no one will understand you. I did not remember, nor do I yet have any memory of coming home. 3 important months of my life are completely lost. My father tells me that about a month into my hospital stay, he was told to look for a nursing home for me. By God's grace, my recovery has been miraculous. Broken bones heal, and I have learned many memory helpers. However, one of the many difficulties that I continue to deal with is my struggle with safe driving. This is largely due to my double vision. I see twice as good as most people. Please laugh. I have trouble, too, with depth perception. Some of the nerves that control the movement in my left eye were damaged in the accident, and or the message from the nerves is not correctly translated in my brain. In addition, due to brain injury...
Ms. Black, could you wrap up? Because we have others that want to testify, and in fairness to them,
My decision-making is not swift enough to drive safely in heavy traffic, nor do I feel safe driving at night. Extensive experience with Metro Transit and other transit systems, but the Sibley-McCloudy Area Regional Transit System cost me $180 to get from my home in Gibbon to the Capitol. Support rural transit.
Thank you very much. Our next testifier is Bonnie Dinsmore.
Yes, I'm from Lafayette, and it's nice to see how government works. It's wonderful. And what I'm calling about, here about, is that we need public transportation. I live in Lafayette, Minnesota, and we do all of our shopping in New Ulm. So we get there quite often, and we'd like to be able to go to different places in New Ulm, which we can't now, because evidently every person with the different transit companies have make up their own bid to get this grant, okay? So this is a whole learning process for me. But what I would like to do is live in my home as long as I can. And I can't see very well, so I have to wing it. I don't have notes. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about is public transit.
Thank you very much.
It would be really nice if they could cross county lines. It seems to me that's where the
It's another
problem.
issue that Commissioner Morrow raised to me many years ago. So thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
We have Ann Vogel, followed by Ellen Van Kuna.
This is going to save you because they're just going to put up signs and not talk, and I'm just going to talk. My name is Ann Vogel. I'm a physician that practices at New Ulm Medical Center, and I listen to everything. I'm not going to tell you about all the horror stories. When I was 10 years old, I remember my father, who was a physician, came home and said a family got wiped out at the Y. Many died. Some were really severely injured. That story has been repeated, so I don't have to tell you anymore. Since I came back to my home community to practice in 1970, a similar sort of situation occurred. But what you haven't heard today is that if you remember that Highway 14 goes east and west, and if you're driving around 4 o'clock in the afternoon and returning to New Ulm, you're blinded by the sun. Nobody's really mentioned that. If you can be on a two-laner and you can't see, I had a patient of mine who came from Rochester, and by the time they got to Mankato, he was killed because he couldn't see the midline. That was one example. And I know that some patients who have been at the Mayo Clinic got killed outside Dodge Center for the same reason. They had left the clinic and were driving west, and the sun was setting, and that's dangerous. So I can tell you that's a little different take on what you've heard already. We can't change the position of Highway 14. The sun is still going to come up and down the way it always did, and there are certain times when you have a two-laner, it's a deadly sort of situation to be in. And the last thing on this piece, this little lady that just testified, you know, we don't have shut-ins very often anymore. They're home-based. That means that they're getting out and they're getting into vehicles and transit to stay well, and they're going to clinics, and we're trying to keep them healthy and well. So your population has changed. Their expectations are different. They're no longer shut-ins. They're homebound or home-based, which means they get in a car and they go someplace, get their things attended to when it comes to just daily activities of living, buying groceries, and coming home again. So that's part of the whole equation you're talking about here. So now they're just going to ask my people the signs that we put up, and I thought you needed a little bit of comic relief. And the last thing I'm going to tell you is this. We have gnomes in New Ulm, and this thing is shovel ready. So we want full funding, and you know, this is the bucket it has to go in, and it has to go to Highway 14. Thank you all for your help, and I hope that a little break in the seriousness has helped you all.
So I appreciate that for many reasons. But, you know, my background before I was elected, this is for you LiUNA folks. I mean, I was an organizer. And so someone actually holding up a sign that says Corridors of Commerce, that warms my heart. You know, we see lots of signs around the Capitol, but no Corridors of Commerce ones. So, anyway, I don't know, Ellen, Wayne, Norman, I don't know how many of you.
They're not going to talk. They just put their sign
Okay, all right. Well, I'm not sure who's who, but I'm going to, was Ellen one of your people here? Yeah. Okay, and is Wayne Lipke.
He spoke already.
Oh, all right. Sorry about that.
John.
Norman Hanson.
No, I'm a sign holder.
Okay. David Christian.
Hi,
Welcome
David
to the
Christian from
committee.
the City of New Ulm. I was actually, again, thank you, Commerce, or the committee, for letting me speak. I've been a little impatient. I was actually the first one here, thought I was pre-registered to sit next to Mr. Brandt to speak.
Sorry about that, sir.
That's all right. Actually, I'm always a positive thinker. Everything has been covered on my list. You've heard stats, statistics today and whatnot. My closing statement probably is going to sum this up best for all the people in this room. One comment I do want to make to Mr. Torkelson, I agree with you, take it to Brookings as long as Nicollet to New Ulm is first. again, you've heard all those statistics. One item I did not hear was patience. Now, I'm going to say this as a counselor with the city of New Ulm. The patience exhibited by our region, our area, and our community, we have waited approximately 50 years for this improvement. How often does that happen? Unfortunately, there is no line on a funding application that asks how long you have waited. You don't get points for that. It's time to get it done. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your patience today. That's right. So we have our last two people on the list are Lyle Femright and Fritz Bush. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the, oh, you're both coming up together. Okay. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Lyle Femright. I represent the Blue Earth County Township Association, and I thank you all for being here, ladies and gentlemen. I represent a township here in Blue Earth County. I am the chairman of the Blue Earth County Township Association. I also serve on the L&R committee for the Minnesota Township Association, and we were recently in St. Paul to lobby there. Just to give you a bigger view, we have 23 townships here in Blue Earth County, and on a bigger vision, there are actually 1,800 townships in the state of Minnesota, which represents 55,000 miles of road. We have the largest share of roads in the state of Minnesota. 39% of the roads in Minnesota are represented by townships. That equates to about 30 miles per township. Right now, our population in our township is around 1,100 people, and so it's like a small city, but it's spread out. And so what we need is more funding for roads. We also have 6,000 bridges here in the state, and there are a number of those that are deficient, probably around 5–10% that still need funding for bridge needs on township roads. Our roads serve the ag industry. It serves businesses. It serves homes. It serves the recreational industry. It serves a wide range of services here. Many of our roads are gravel. Many of them are paved. However, there still is needs. One of the needs that you've got to realize is that many of these roads were built at the turn of the century. They weren't graded to today's standards. Many of these roads are narrow. Many of them have safety deficiencies. Quite frankly, there aren't many township roads that are being regraded simply because there isn't enough monies available for those purposes. So we need a sustainable funding that comes back to the townships. Our levying on a local level is to maintain our roads, and that falls on the constituents in the township. For instance, over in Waseca County, for instance, one of the supervisors was telling me they have 143 residents, and they're a same size township as ours, where we have 1,100. So just think of the tax load on those people in those townships with maybe 100 or 200 people versus ours. Now, there are townships much greater than ours, of course, but there has to be some level of funding that can be spread out to the townships. And I realize we don't have 30,000 cars a day on our roads, but we have machinery that is extremely large. The ag equipment, the logging industry, and many other services. So I just ask you to provide sustainable funding, not just a one-time thing. It's got to be sustainable. Thank you very much.
Well, and thank you, and Mr. Femright. And again, this came up in St. Cloud, so we've heard in our greater Minnesota hearings, this has been a continual theme. Yes, Representative Runbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Femright, I'm just thinking about, excuse me, your issue there. How do you deal with the snow, removing of snow? Is that, how does that interrelate to the road
Absolutely,
maintenance?
absolutely.
I mean,
We have,
is it the same people? Is it, I don't know. Is your road issue to do with equipment that isn't available, or
Well,
or what?
we have, of course, maintaining the roads, we have snow removal, we have ditch mowing, we have all kinds of services to the roads, just like any other community, whether it's county or city or state. We have to maintain the roads to a level of serviceability. And yes, most townships have equipment to provide snow removal.
Okay. Well, and Mr. Chair, Mr.
Representative
Fenright, so you have the staff and you have equipment, but it's the issue of upgrading the road then.
Well, and just maintaining them
making
in terms of having adequate, whether it's graveling the roads, whether it's providing resurfacing of the roads, or correcting safety concerns that may be in different areas. Because a lot of these were built 100 years ago, a lot of the roads.
Well, Mr. Chair, just,
Representative
so personnel-wise, do the same people, are the people you have available for maintenance of the roads and snowmobile, or snow plowing, are they available to you then when it comes to construction? Are you just, is it the materials issue?
Well, we would have
or
to
what?
hire contractors just like anybody else. We would have to buy materials just like any other entity, whether it's a county or a city. We have the same type of needs of contracting to rebuild, contracting to haul gravel, contracting to resurface a road.
Okay, so let me try it one more time. Are your personnel who are doing the roads now, maintaining them, are they available to be part of the team, the crew that builds roads, or do they not have that capacity?
The people that we employ?
Yes.
They are operators of equipment. They aren't necessarily road builders.
They're not road builders.
They maintain it just like the county maintains their roads, driving trucks, blades, that type of thing. So,
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Our last testifier for the day is Fritz Bush. Welcome to the committee.
Hi. I'm Fritz Bush. I'm a staff writer at the New Ulm Journal. I'm here today on behalf, I guess you could say, of another shipmate. I'm a retired Navy reservist, Persian Gulf veteran, and so is Dwayne Hauser from New Ulm. He lost a son a few years ago at the corner of State Highway 68 and 169. I think it's in Blue Earth County. He died in a crash. What I'm talking about is coming on 68 to 169. I don't believe there's a lighted sign there saying traffic's approaching. I have talked to several truckers about this, semi-drivers saying that they don't have good sight lines on looking down 169, that they have to pull out and then hope the traffic will slow so they don't hit them. So that's what I'm talking about today, and I'm saying maybe a lighted traffic approaching sign, a warning system would be good to avoid more crashes. There's been a number of crashes there, and I'm concerned about it.
Thank you very much. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Bush, and thank you for the New Ulm Journal's advocacy for many years for transportation. Sure. So this is concludes our list. Is there anyone that we've left out that wants to testify? We have maybe room for one or two more. Okay, well, thank you. Yes, one more. One more. Couple of minutes here, and please state your name for the record.
My name is Dave Borkert, and I'm.
Can you spell your last name, please?
B-O-R-C-H-E-R-T.
Okay.
And I'm a Brown County Commissioner
welcome.
representing the 1st District. I'm also the chairman of the board, and somewhat unique, I'm a police chief for the city of New Ulm.
Wow.
So
well, thank you for stepping up.
And I thought I was on the list earlier, but maybe there was something.
I apologize.
But I think, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me this opportunity. Regarding Highway 14, I just wanted to give a very brief testimony. there's certainly the economic benefit and also the safety, but somewhat unique. As a police officer, we're very close to Nicollet County. The city of New Ulm's not in Nicollet County, but I've had to respond when they refer to the Y and regarding Highway 14. If there's been a collision, if there's a fatality, the closest law enforcement response. So I've had that ability as a peace officer to respond to those crashes, and there's certainly the economic development opportunity for southern Minnesota with Highway 14, but firsthand experience with responding to fatalities and serious collisions in the past, when you've been in that situation, you really never forget that. And, one thing, also one of the earlier individuals that testified regarding a fatality that happened last April, that was actually a neighbor of mine. So I think we can, a lot of people in New Ulm and Brown County, I think we can all give personal examples how it's touched our lives, and I felt compelled to share that with you. And I know that a lot of times when we're responding to those type of things, as a police officer, you're always looking at how you can improve the situation, and I'm very confident that fixing Highway 14, making it a 4-lane would improve those outcomes. And I hope that you join me in supporting this improvement. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Well, thank you doubly for being the chairman of the county board and for your service in law enforcement. It's much appreciated.
And thank you for this opportunity.
Sure. Okay, well, members, that brings our hearing to a close. We have a tradition. I have final comments, but I always defer first to the ranking member, and we'll do that, and then we'll be on our way. Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the 5th of these hearings we've had, and according to my recollection, it's the first one that will finish early. We have, in every other case, gone overtime, so I would go back to my opening remarks and say that you did save the best for last. We're concise, and we tell a good story about Highway 14. But I'll also go on to say, as I've said in our other meetings, how challenging our work is. We don't have unlimited resources. We, along with the Department of Transportation and the rest of the legislature and the governor, we have to make tough decisions because there are Highway 14s all over the state. We know that there are many other roads that also have dire need of repair and upgrading. And while I'm an advocate for Highway 14, and I will be to the bitter end, there are each of my colleagues in the legislature also have other highways that they are advocates for. That doesn't make our work easy. It makes it very challenging, and I look forward to our work this year to see just how much we can accomplish. Transportation often has been kind of left in the dust. There's many other demands on state resources that seem at times to be more immediate than transportation, but I believe that we need to pass a substantial transportation bill every biennium, and I challenge our current leadership to make sure that this year's transportation bill, whatever form it takes, whatever resources are utilized, that it's a substantial transportation bill that keeps us moving in the direction of getting more work done in this next biennium.
Thank you, Representative Torkelson. And we've had these 5 hearings, and I believe that all 3 of you have attended all of them. You get a gold star. So it's very much appreciated because it's been a hectic time at the Capitol, and I appreciate all the members and Representative Runbeck and Representative Richardson for coming today too on a busy day. So with that, we just wanted to let the public, in addition to thanking you, and thank you for your warm welcome and in your excellent testimony, very, very helpful testimony, and your stories in particular that are so heartfelt and authentic, and this is something we just don't get sometimes when we stay at the Capitol, so it's very helpful. We are going to be embarking now over the next month or so in putting together a bill. I believe will be a substantial bill, Representative Torkelson, and I appreciated your comments on that. in addition to the governor's plan, which by and large I support, we will be putting together our own committee plan, and that will happen over the next month. And then in early April, that plan will be finalized, and then we have a break for Easter and Passover, and as soon as that break is over at the end of April, we will be on the House floor with the transportation bill. And then, of course, what happens in May is negotiations between the governor, the House, and the Senate, and hopefully on our constitutionally mandated day of adjournment, May 22nd, we will have a new transportation bill. So we do need new revenue into the system. The needs are great. As Representative Torkelson said, there's Highway 14s all over the state, and we have many, many proposals, very excellent proposals coming into this committee for funding specific projects. We also have tremendous needs in transit, and I particularly appreciated some of the testimony on the rural transit needs, and as well as in the metro area. And then, of course, this committee takes care of airports and ports and traffic safety issues. We have a broad mandate. We also fund the Department of Public Safety, and as Representative Torkelson said, we probably haven't had the last bills related to MNLARs and deputy registrars this session. So we have a big agenda, but with your help and with your involvement in the process, it makes it go very well, and we appreciate that so much. So with that, members, our final field hearing is adjourned.